Hello?
Bag labor.
Kurt, can I interest you in?
Oh, no, thank you.
Kurt's got his own stash. Good evening and welcome to the Foxborough Zoning Board of Appeals, March 16, 2023 meeting. This meeting and the public hearings that we will be considering is being recorded by Foxboro Cable Access. And because one of our members is participating by Zoom, all votes that we take tonight will be done by roll call. That's whether he's voting on the matter or otherwise. So the time being 6:30, we have some administrative matters. I think the first thing is the minutes from the February 16th meeting. Do we also have that? We don't have the meeting minutes from the March 9th.
No.
So anybody have any questions?
No.
I had a couple of small changes. One was the motion that we approved on the Moore Street matter. I gave that to Diana as it was provided.
Okay.
And just a couple of other small items, but other than that, I was satisfied with it. So, a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, let me start right to left. Lorraine?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Barney, yes, so approved. Coming attractions, we will have a busy meeting in April. We've gotten 2 new applications.
Yes.
There'll be a continuance of one of the matters tonight. And there are a couple of other matters that have been brought to our attention that hopefully will not be filed this month, but the potential exists. If they are filed this month, and since the 2 that I'm thinking of, those matters are represented by the same individual, I'm going to ask him to continue until May. And I know you're not going to be here in May. But I'll ask to continue.
The 2 new ones?
The 2 that I'm thinking may be coming in, that I know that are out there,
Okay.
okay, that haven't been filed yet, but I know we'll be getting. One would be a monopole off of Route 1, and the other would be a number of signs, which we think are in Patriot Place. So if those do come in this month, I'll try to get them continued until May, because in April, we'll at least have a billboard application, the two that Diana received today, and Walnut Street. So, not that I won't want to do it, but we may have to start early as well that night.
That is a busy meeting.
Yep. Okay, we've got to wait until, and I'm going to do by my watch, until 6:35 before we can open the public hearing. But anything anybody else has?
Do we know what time we're starting the April 6th one?
I've got a conflict that night, so we're going to talk about that later.
Okay.
Okay. Try to pick another night or another time
Okay.
on that day. Anything else anybody has?
No.
Okay, let's just wait until 6:35. And that clock's not correct, so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the time being 6:35 PM, American Outdoor Advertising requests a special sign permit pursuant to the code of the town of Foxborough, Massachusetts, Chapter 213 Signs, Section 213-3C1A, and 213-5A1, Table 1 Permitted Signs, Sign District 2, Billboard, and 213-6B2C, to allow the construction of a two-sided electronic billboard at 1 Springbrook Road, which is Assessors Map 94, Parcel 19, in Sign District 2. Mr. Burr.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. As you've advertised, we would request that this hearing is opened. We have consented to a continuance to April 20th, given the large schedule that the zoning board has this evening, and you have that paperwork.
Yes, and signed.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll see you on.
So we need to have a motion to continue to April 20?
Move to continue until April 20.
Dave, you want to second it?
Second?
Okay, again, I got to do my roll
Second.
call. Kim?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Barney, yes. And we'll put you on first. My guess is we'll probably start, we usually start at 7, but we'll probably start at 6:30, maybe 6 o'clock. We'll let you know in advance.
Okay, sounds great. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. Have a
Good,
good
thank
evening.
Thank you
see
very
that.
much.
Thought you got lost.
No, I thought it started at 7. I'll finish it up in the email.
When we notice a public hearing for a specified time, we can't start before that time. We can obviously start later, which we frequently do, but we can't start before. So inasmuch as the next matter is noticed for 6:40 PM, we unfortunately need to wait to that particular time.
You might need it later.
We're going to read into items if they're, is it the other read one item?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
Want me to read the big one? Whatever works best for you.
Yeah, because I've got other things I want to read, so, okay. Oh, okay. Okay, the time being 6:40 PM, we have the continued appeal by Jeffrey and Sandra Cook pursuant to Section 10.2.2.1 of the Code of the Town of Foxborough, Massachusetts, Chapter 275 zoning, of a zoning enforcement decision dated December 19, 2022, from the Town of Foxborough Building Commissioner, Zoning Enforcement Officer, stating unlawful storage at 73 Spring Street is a violation of Chapter 275 zoning, Table 3-1, Table of Uses, Use C.9, contractor yard, and D.4, junkyard, auto graveyard. Properties located in the R40 residential and agricultural district. Mr. Cook, do you want to join us? As everybody knows, we started this matter in January, continued it to February because Mr. Shippey was not here at that point. We continued it again to tonight. We did a site walk on February 9. The site walk included Mr. Shippey, Mr. Yegian, Ms. Mellon, and me. And because the three of us were the only ones who participated in the site walk, we're the individuals who will be voting tonight. However, Lorraine and David can participate in the matter, but the three individuals who will be voting are us. Scott, do you want to start and tell us your position?
Basically, I stand by my letter. As you know, when we did that walkthrough on the, I think it was February 9th, I just saw material or items that were there at the site that were not relative to the agricultural use that Mr. Cook was suggesting. There was a pontoon boat there. There was 2 Lincoln Continentals, snowmobiles, a train that was actually really cool because it was an antique. It was really nice. But there was other vehicles that weren't registered there. So I stand by my letter, and I feel strongly about that.
Okay. Mr. Hook, do you want to respond?
Okay, this violation that he sent me, I mean, it was obviously coached by someone who fed him information to give me these violations. When you guys did your site walk, I feel it's obvious that I'm not running a contractor's yard or a junkyard. I think in the beginning, this should have been investigated better. Questions should have been asked about what was registered, what wasn't registered, what things were used for, things like that. Now, in my violation notice, I was ordered to remove items that are perfectly legal on my property, and I'm still looking for answers on why I would have to remove things like sheds and pontoon boats and various trailers and cars and pickup trucks that are perfectly legal in anybody else's yard in town. Can you give me any kind of reason why I could not have a pontoon boat in my yard?
Can I address that?
Yes.
First, you made the claim that everything on that property was for agricultural use.
No, I
But, well,
didn't.
let me finish. A pontoon boat is not for agricultural use. Second, first of all, when I approached you, we did have a conversation. I asked you if I could do a site walk. You refused. You never reached out to me, and this is where we are. And here you have it. You gave me no opportunity to do a site visit, to discuss with you everything that was on that. So I had no, let me finish again. I had no other recourse but to file the determination because I had a legitimate complaint.
I'm probably the easiest one in town. Can we just go back to the pontoon boat, because you brought that up for, can you please tell me why I could not have that on my site? Or why that couldn't be parked in anybody else's yard in town?
You know, I think ultimately
You
that.
brought it up.
That's going to be up to
Ultimately, that's
them.
our decision.
That's up to their
That's
decision.
our
Okay.
decision. So
Okay.
ultimately, we'll reach ultimately, hopefully tonight, we'll reach a determination on that, okay? But go ahead and continue.
I mean, everything in that upper lot is just normal stuff that me and my family use. It doesn't sit there and, it's stuff being used. It's all legal stuff. It's all stuff that we used in our normal family life. And I did tell you on site there that stuff parked in that area was not agricultural related.
So let's ask you a couple questions. You have a parcel of property that's 4+ acres. You're using a small portion for agricultural purposes, correct?
Right.
And certain equipment, certain of the materials are being used for agricultural purposes. They're supporting that particular business.
Correct. Everything that I showed you.
But there are other items that are not correct being used for that purpose?
Yeah, the other items are just our everyday family fun stuff. Mm-hmm. Camper, boat, snowmobiles.
Okay. Any questions from anyone?
Hang on, sorry.
Go ahead.
So I do have a question. So you had talked about raising pumpkins.
Correct.
And that the amount of land that you would use to raise the pumpkins has changed over the years. So when did you start with the pumpkins? How many years ago? Roughly.
Maybe 6 or 7 when we first started.
Maybe 2000. Yeah.
Approximately 6 or 7 years.
Okay. And then, so what part of your property would you say was used when you first started for the pumpkins? I guess I'm looking for, is it like 1/4 of an acre and now it's 1/2 of an acre or something? I I don't know, I'm asking you, just sort of an example. So how would you say it's changed since you started?
We've just kind of become a little bit more organized over the years.
Why
Expand.
don't you put the microphone? Actually, the microphone you won't hear, but if you would, just speak louder.
We've just become more organized in moving the pumpkin patch to an area where it's more flatter, easier to irrigate. I don't know if this has anything to do with a junkyard or a contractor's yard, but I don't mind answering questions.
And would you say the amount, I guess, the first year, about how much land did you use to grow the pumpkins, the actual growing of the pumpkins? And what would you say it is now? I'm just interested to hear how it changed.
We condensed multiple planting areas into one big one.
Question we have to answer.
That's one thing we did.
We don't know.
We moved the planting area from the lower field, which you saw just a big grass area, we moved it up above because it was easier to work around. Besides the planting area, you need a good amount of area around it just to support it.
But how has the area changed? Where did it start and what is it now?
How has it
The size.
changed?
The size. The first pumpkin patch was,
You mean like square footage?
Like, has it gotten larger or
Yeah.
smaller since you've started doing this? Has it changed in any shape appreciably?
I think it got smaller, bigger, then a little smaller, and then the size it is now.
now it's a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Okay, so out of the 4 acres, what would you say the last pumpkin patch? I don't know, those of us who were at the site and also you yourself, what would be, I know we sort of talked about it when we were there that day in February, but how big do you think the pumpkin patch
Well,
is right now?
are you talking about the square footage of just the area that was planted or the whole thing around it that supports it?
Both.
The whole thing.
That would be interesting.
So last year we had the 2 pumpkin patches, so what's that square footage?
I mean, it's an acre or 2 that supports it, or?
I mean, to me, when I was on site, it looked to be about, and maybe at most, a quarter acre.
Of the actual
Of-
patch?
Of the patch that was planted?
Yeah, with the area that was being cultivated for pumpkins.
Okay, the cultivation area is about a quarter of an acre.
I would estimate, just by eyeballing it, yeah.
Okay, Scott, what
I
would,
could agree with that.
would you, and Barney? That would be, okay, so about a quarter of an acre was planted, shall we say?
Right. All this information is in our 61A report that we give to the assessor's office.
And we're just asking you, because you're
Right,
here.
right. I just don't know exact square footage off the top of my head. What I just said was my best estimates.
Okay, so a quarter of an acre roughly
I would say
planted.
so, yeah.
And that doesn't include, you would need something to go around it for, a tractor or, that
The water
sort of.
truck.
Yeah, for watering, that sort of stuff. Just so I have a general idea. Okay, that was my question for now. I may have some more.
Yep, Kurt, go ahead. Questions?
A couple of questions I had is that you said that, and I guess there's 2 different things I heard here. Did you say that all of the equipment, everything that was on that site supports the farm vis-a-vis that 61A? All of that equipment on there?
Yes, any agricultural type equipment supports that right there and that only.
Because, I've spent a life in the building industry, and it just seems like an inordinate amount of equipment to support a quarter-acre pumpkin patch.
Well, if you saw what was there in the beginning, what I started with, the stumps and the rocks and the dumpings and just all the loom I had to screen, and I mean, the machines were used, and they still are being used. I have I have a lot of work to do still. And
And are all the vehicles registered?
yes,
Okay. The snowmobiles, do they need to be registered?
snowmobiles don't need to be I mean, we only register them where we use them in New Hampshire.
So are they currently registered? I mean, they look like it was an antique snow machine. They're a tracked vehicle on a trailer?
No, it's not currently registered. We didn't register this year.
So are you said all the vehicles were registered?
Anything that's required to be registered in the town of Foxborough. You don't have to have your snowmobile registered in the state of Mass to have it in your yard. I
And the
believe
shipping
that-
containers that are in the front yard, that supports the farm?
Yeah, because I do have a farm tractor in there. I also have a canoe in there.
Okay. But, so does all that equipment support the agriculture,
Yes.
the canoe?
I guess if it rained a real lot, it would.
And the black Lincoln car and the blue Lincoln car, do they support the agricultural pursuits?
No.
The camping trailer?
No, as I said before, everything in that area is just our family vehicles, family toys.
Okay.
So in looking over the list of personal property that you sent to us, so I sort of tallied it all up. And so what I came up with was 3 trucks, 4 tanks, 2 shipping containers, 9 trailers, 3 shelters, 3 tractors, 2 cars, and 7 sheds. So that's what I added up from the list that you
In
had sent
the
us
front yard, you mean?
prior to the site walk.
Is that in the front yard, or is that everything?
No, that is the list that they gave us.
I see, okay.
So that's,
Okay.
Correct, that sounds right.
okay. Yes, thank you for the list. That was helpful.
But that didn't sound like it included a lot of the construction equipment that was in the back. Excavators. things
Oh,
of that
that's
Right.
true. The excavator wasn't on there.
There was a lot of equipment that you just mentioned.
That's true, the train that you had mentioned.
Train, there were wood splitting machines, there were excavators,
I don't
there were other
rem-
vehicles.
What I just read was I may not have included, like, I think the wood splitter may have been on the list, but I didn't. I was more looking for multiples of things, so the wood splitter may have been on that actual list.
Do you want to follow with a question from there, or?
But no, I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure
Yep.
that sounded correct.
Lorraine, any questions?
I just have a question about the number of sheds, just reading, a shed cannot exceed 400 square feet, but is there a limit to number of sheds?
No.
No, so you could have
No.
multiple.
Size and location on property, that's it.
Okay.
As far as setbacks, location. But there's nothing in the bylaw that limits numbers of sheds.
And the cars, for example, the family cars, are they in use? Or are they,
Yeah, they're in use. I don't think, well, yeah, there is one car there tonight.
and the
today.
boat?
The boat, yes, we use that up in Maine.
So I don't mean to interrupt, but all of the vehicles are operational?
Correct.
Okay.
All registered.
And so how many motor vehicles do you have?
I don't know. I'd have to count. You mean at that location?
Yes.
I would have. Right now, there's 3. Because we use them.
Okay.
I mean, I have 3 sons, and one has 3 vehicles, one has 2, and the other one has 1.
Do they live at home?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a few vehicles. She has a vehicle. I have numerous trailers. All stuff that we use every day. We're in and out of there every day. This isn't some place where stuff gets backed in and parked forever.
When you are using some of the equipment for agricultural use, what would you say the hours, the days and the hours that you would use them?
I'd say the best estimate of when I use them would probably be Friday afternoons when I had enough of work, sometimes late morning when I'm aggravated and I just need to get away from work. I do respect Sunday noise rules. I don't run anything on Sunday. I always shut everything off before 7 p.m. Well, I don't work that late anyways, and I never run things early in the morning. And as far as equipment and, what I have there, I would, even the stuff is large for what I'm doing there. That stuff that I have there is actually very quiet as far as equipment goes. Anything I have there, I have it, I have in mind, it's quiet stuff. And even though you could say it's oversized, with a larger machine, you can get something done a lot quicker and quieter than running something little for a long time.
What's the earliest in the morning that you would use a piece of equipment?
Probably 9-ish
At the earliest.
At the earliest.
Okay.
I don't really, it's usually weekdays, just like a couple hours here, a couple hours there, in between my work schedule. Mostly when people aren't even home, neighbors, when they're not even home.
The agricultural activity is, there's the growing of the pumpkins, correct? That's really all you're doing right now?
Well, some produce, but the main thing is the pumpkins, because that was the most fun.
And the growing season is when to when? Figure what, April to October?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So, obviously, there's no agricultural activity from October, maybe the end of October, until the spring, correct?
No, I mean,
You still have to-
farmers don't go on vacation for the rest of the year. I mean, I'm not a full career farmer, but I do a lot of other stuff to get ready for next year, whether I'm cutting a tree or pulling a stump or mixing some compost or screening some loam.
Okay.
And expanding the field,
Yeah,
we're always trying to expand
I just kind of
little by little.
expand a little at a time. That whole area right there was at one time a big field, but when I bought it, it was just a big mess.
That I want to read into the record. First is dated February 6, 2023. It's addressed to the Town of Foxborough Zoning Board of Appeals regarding bylaw violations. Primary resident concerns regarding 73, 79, and 91 Spring Street properties. Heavy machinery. Removal of heavy equipment / junk from Mr. Cook's junkyard at 24 East Belcher Lot to above properties. Bylaws against junkyards in Foxborough. Complete tree removal, stripping acres of land behind residential properties. Land after tree removal was filled with gravel from other sites without plans, engineering, or permits. Unregistered cars and trucks. And then it goes on to say commercial storage containers, sheds, dumpsters, water tanks, jersey barriers, retaining blocks, steel gates. He is decreasing the value of all of our properties. This is from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 residents. Because I can't read some of the handwriting, I'll just indicate the individual reside at the following addresses: 112 Spring Street, 101 Spring, 76 Spring, 72 Spring, 71 Spring, 70 Spring, 67 Spring, 62 Spring, 61 Spring, 83 Spring, 108 Spring, 34 Spring, 34 Spring, 65 Spring, and 107 Spring. And Kim, would you read the second letter?
Yes. This is a letter from David and Kathleen Young dated March 12th of this year. Dear members of the Zoning Board, we are writing to express our concern about the 73 Spring Street property owned by Jeffrey and Sandra Cook. We are a direct abutter to this property. We have witnessed over several years the buildup of junk on this property. The yard contains trailers, boats, shipping containers, sheds, jersey barriers, campers, old cars, old trucks, and other miscellaneous items. This junk is visible from our property and has become a nuisance and an eyesore to our daily life. They increasingly bring more and more junk to this site and have built up a dirt berm so we can visibly see all of this junk. As a property owner in this area, we believe it is important to maintain a safe and attractive community. The junkyard is an eyesore that detracts from the beauty of the neighborhood and decreases the value of our property, even though our property taxes continue to rise. Additionally, the junkyard poses a potential hazard, as it may contain hazardous wastes that may impact the neighbors. We had witnessed an oil tank that was on the property for many months that has since been removed after your site visit. We have reached out to town officials over many years regarding the property and have not received any action to resolve the issue until now. We are asking the town zoning board to take stern action to enforce the town zoning laws and require the owner to clean up their property and remove the junk. We also believe the property owner is not compliant with zoning laws regarding the setback requirements and lack of building permits for the construction of a shed and the installation of fencing with the height exceeding the zoning requirements. The town had put in a drainage pipe to alleviate water from entering Spring Street homes. Mr. Cook brought in outside soil/dirt to create a dirt berm, which blocks not only the drainage pipe but also disturbed the wetlands and is now causing water to back up into our yard and our neighbor's yard at 69 Spring Street. Commercial equipment is constantly out on the property and should be stored in a proper location. This includes backhoes, bulldozers, excavators, dump trucks, etc. We understand such equipment is required for short-term projects, but this equipment cannot be stored here out in the open. We have experienced the operation of such equipment over several years. We request they complete their project and remove the equipment within a reasonable time. We are tired of hearing the noise of the operation of this equipment every weekend, and it interferes with the enjoyment of our property. I believe these are reasonable requests that would benefit not only us, but the entire neighborhood. Thank you for taking the time to consider our concerns. We look forward to your response at this week's meeting. Sincerely, David and Kathleen Young.
So I think both those communications pretty much sum up where the neighborhood is, but if there's anything anybody would like to add that doesn't really reiterate
add
that,
something.
but go ahead. And actually, the best thing would be to go to the podium.
That's where I'm going.
Okay. And tell us who you are. We know who you are, but tell us who you are.
Bill Cook, 112 Spring Street. I think we're getting off of the subject here. It's not about a pontoon boat. It's about all the junk vehicles in the yard that are down back. They all come down from 24 East Belcher Street, which he has commercial property up there. And the overflow, what he can't fit up there, he just brings down there. It's not a farm, it's not a pumpkin patch, it's none of that. It's a junkyard. He has excavators that you hear running all the time. As the young stated, it's annoying to have to listen to this stuff at all times. Okay, all the areas, it's not just about 73 Spring Street either. 79 and 91 properties that he owned. Everything just keeps transferring back and forth. There's 3 shipping containers on the property. This is residential area. What are we doing with shipping containers on a property? I don't get it. You don't need it. How much stuff can you store? He's got a huge house to begin with. There's plenty of storage room there. Down back, he's got more garbage down there, junk. It's just out of control. After our last meeting, just out of, what do you want to call it? Just to prove that, you know, he can do what he wants to do, he stripped a whole section of land next to 91 Spring Street and in between my daughter's house. Just cut down trees, left 2-3-foot stumps. Now you go back to 73 Spring Street, and he's filled the land 5 to 6 feet, all right? There's a culvert that goes underneath the road, as Mr. Young had stated to you. And now this is causing water problems there because he's got the land up so high. He's also said it himself that he, you know, stumps, stones, and everything. Well, it's all buried out back there. Where did that big black tank go? Is that buried out back, or did he take it somewhere? There's just too much stuff going on there, and it needs to be stopped. And he needs to be stopped right away. Stop cutting down and all the trees and stripping the land. He just strips it so he can go from one house to the next to the next. Now, I know you're supposed to have a plan. You're supposed to have it engineered if you're going to start clearing land, and you're supposed to have permits. I don't think any of those have been done. So there's a lot of violations, and I've talked to Mr. Cook a couple of different times years ago, and like I said, his attitude is this: I'll do what I want. All right? I live in a residential zone. I want to keep it residential. I'm sure all the pictures I gave you, everybody's looked at them. You wouldn't want that next to your house. It's terrible. So we're in an R40 zone. Let's keep it an R40 zone. Go get a commercial building somewhere and take all your stuff there.
Anyone else? I assume that this side of the room agrees with Mr. Cook, with Bill Cook, right? Absolutely. Okay. Any other questions here?
Scott, might you address what the gentleman just said about needing permits?
The sheds don't require a permit. Would permits regarding what, land clearing?
Yes, land clearing.
That would be through the select board,
Okay.
I do believe.
Okay,
And that's if he's cutting fill off the property as well.
Those sheds have come from different properties.
That got,
Yeah. But the sheds don't require building permits because they're under the 200 square feet, and it is a residential zone.
okay.
yeah, anything like 400 and above would require a permit.
200,
200 above?
201 above in residential.
Okay.
And all of the sheds?
And I did speak to Mr. Cook regarding the fence, and I'm sure he's agreeable to cut it down so it does meet that requirement.
Okay.
As to the setbacks, I think we're all in agreement that it was at least 5 feet, because that's what an accessory structure can be,
Yep.
5 feet.
When do I get to say something?
Wait. Anything else?
No.
If the shipping containers are used for storage, is their size in excess of 201 square feet? I didn't do the site visit.
Got it.
I would think it is.
They're in excess of 200 square feet, yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. The shipping, that big green,
Yes.
I shouldn't use the word big, but the green shipping container at the beginning.
Absolutely.
Can I make a correction? It's a stormwater bylaw, and it's through the planning board. The
For-
clearing of
For
the
the
lot.
land clearing?
Yes, I
It's through the
apologize for that.
Planning board?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Kurt, any questions?
Still getting familiar with the bylaws.
Go ahead.
Okay, as far as the number of people that don't like what I do, I mean, basically what you heard is one guy who doesn't like what I do, and he's coaching 14 other people. You know, I would like to,
Let him say whatever he wants to say.
you know, how many people do you think we have live on Spring Street? I don't know, 100, 150? I'm just guessing. And we have 15 of them here that don't like what I do.
I think the answer, though, is if one person brought an issue to Mr. Shippey's attention, and he believed that there was a violation of the zoning bylaw, and that matter was appealed, it would be up to us to make a decision. So it doesn't matter whether it's 1 or 15 or 50 or 100 or 1% or 10% or any other percentage of residents. The fact of the matter is that there was an issue that was brought to Mr. Shippey's attention, and he exercised his responsibility as a zoning enforcement officer. And then you exercise your right to appeal, and now it's our obligation to make a decision.
Right.
So, unless there are other questions, are we ready to close the public portion, or do you have?
I do have one more question. Are there hazardous materials buried on the property?
No. And I don't even know what to say to that. It's just, these allegations are just crazy, this burying
don't
and
think
It's
stuff.
not an allegation,
No,
we're just
it's
asking
just
a
a question.
question.
okay.
We're just, look, we need
okay.
to, we just need to ask the questions.
Right.
And I appreciate the answers. And what do you have, I guess, stored on the property as far as, I don't know, is this even applicable, you know, chemicals, gas, oil?
Go ahead.
What do you have stored on the property?
The closest, the only chemicals would be, there was a job box that I opened up that I think I showed you because you asked to see what was inside. And sometimes I'll put a little thing of chainsaw gas or some chainsaw oil in there. And that's the only chemicals that get stored there.
So the fuel, the diesel fuel for the excavators and all that, that's stored somewhere off-site, or do you bring a truck in, or?
If I have to fuel the machines, which is maybe not too often, I just have a diesel truck come and fuel them up on site.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
So it's about the report of problem now with water because of how the land was raised. Is that something that would also have to go in front of the planning board if someone was? so-
Anything that has to
Is that part of what
do
you were
with
saying? was the
stormwater drainage,
that's the same?
everything, yep.
Okay.
Clearing of 1 acre or more would require a
Clearing
special
of 1
permit
acre
through the
or more.
planning board.
Okay.
I don't know if I should even bring that up. It has nothing to do
I
with
am all set, thank you.
So you want to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I move
Public
that
portion?
we close the public portion of the
It's just a
hearing.
non-issue.
Kurt, you want to second it?
Second that,
Okay. Kim?
Yes.
Kurt?
yes.
And Barney, yes. So I want to read a couple of, 3 definitions from the zoning bylaw. The first is contractor yard. A parcel of land utilized by a contractor for the storage of building supplies and storage and/or maintenance of trucks and other equipment. I think when the reference is the trucks and other equipment, I think it has to apply, though, to the equipment that a contractor is using and not in general. But I'll allow others to disagree with me. Second definition is junkyard. Any area, lot, land, parcel, building, or structure or part thereof that's used for the storage, collection, processing, purchase, sale, or abandonment of junk, or two or more unregistered or inoperable motor vehicles. And the third definition is the definition of junk, which is any scrap, waste, reclaimable material, or debris, whether or not stored or used in conjunction with dismantling, processing, salvage, storage, baling, disposal, or other use or disposition. Junk includes, but is not limited to, vehicles, tires, vehicle parts, machinery, equipment, paper, rags, metal, glass, building materials, household appliances, brush, wood, and lumber. Again, Mr. Shippey's letter talked about contractor yard and junk yard. I don't believe this is a contractor yard. I believe our answer has to do with whether this is or is not a junk yard. When I typically think of a junkyard, I think of a commercial establishment. But the bylaw is a lot broader than that, because again, it talks about any area that's used for the collection or storage of items that would be characterized as junk within the definition of that term in the bylaw. So the fact that, Mr. Cook is not in the quote-unquote business of running a commercial establishment that we would commonly think of a junkyard, a place where you might go to get a bumper for your car or a piece of equipment for a washing machine, does not by itself mean that this is not a junkyard. Now, also, there was reference at the first hearing about the fact that he has 61A entitlement. That's a tax issue, and that has absolutely nothing to do with zoning. So the answer here is, or I shouldn't say the answer, but the question here is there a zoning violation in the sense that the property, even though part of it's being used for farming purposes, constitutes a junkyard within the meaning of the zoning bylaw, and that's the issue that we need to discuss. So let me let others weigh in, and then I'll weigh in.
So I have, I guess, a few things that I've been thinking about. Not a decision, but a few things that I've been thinking about. Let's see. The height of the fences was one of them, but you just mentioned that, so that is great. And about having the sheds properly set back. So those are two things that were questions for me, but I think those have been solved. I wonder whether this is, I think there's a reasonable expectation in a suburban setting to not have to look at the storage of this much machinery and equipment. From the neighbor's perspective, this is certainly not something you would expect to see behind your house, next to your house, or two houses down, let's say. There's long-term storage here. This is not short-term storage. This is not, a pontoon boat is placed, in and of itself, a pontoon boat is not a problem. But generally, a pontoon boat gets put in the water at some point and is no longer stored on the property for, our sort of summer months. And I wonder whether this is adversely affecting the character of the neighborhood. I think there is an argument to be made about storage of excess machinery and equipment. In and of itself, one of these things, or two of these things, or three of these things being stored there, I don't think would be a problem. But the personal property list that we got was pages and pages long. So.
And that's really my issue as well. It's not, it's not one thing or two things, but it's the collection of stuff that's there. There's the equipment, there are pieces of equipment, there are things I can't even identify. There are unregistered tractors, there are large shipping containers, and I wouldn't expect the neighborhood I live in, which is in the same zoning area, to have that kind of equipment on there. There's too much. There's too much to support a quarter-acre pumpkin patch. And there's equipment there and storage containers there that can't only support that pumpkin patch. There's too much stuff there for a residential neighborhood. And I agree with you, Kim. If it was one thing here or there that would come in and out and used frequently, I could get behind that, but there's just too much stuff that's not fitting that character.
Lorraine, you want to say something?
I have to agree with,
Again, you didn't see the property.
I didn't see it, but based on the description and looking at the list, you know, I try and envision that in my neighbor's yard, and it doesn't strike me as the intent of meeting the intent of the zoning.
Exactly.
And, you know, especially the description of shipping containers being used for storage. You know, I'm envisioning even in my own backyard, if I just put 200 square foot storage units in my backyard, I think it would be, again, not what the zoning intention was, but this
Not keeping
this
the
is
spirit
this is above
intent.
this is above and beyond that with, you know, excavators. It's a lot.
David, any comments?
Well, I did not go on a site walk or attend the original hearing, but listening to this, it does seem like it's well beyond what was envisioned in the bylaws of the town. And it's certainly, it's Kurt said, that's a lot of items to support a pumpkin patch. That's all I have, really.
It's just their opinions.
I certainly don't disagree with my colleagues. You know, again, I think it's what's appropriate there is what's supporting your farming activities. But the level of items, the number of items that are not supportive of that goes beyond a certain level. Now, I don't know what the quantitative level is, whether it's 1 or 2 or 5 or 10.
Everything is
But,
being used.
but no. But as Kim indicated, we've got 4 pages worth of, which we appreciate. We appreciate the work that you did to provide us with the inventory. But 4 pages of items, some of which are ancillary to farming, and a lot of which is not. And again, I'll go back to the fact that the zoning bylaw in its definitions of junk and junkyard is expansive. It doesn't have to be, it could be, but it doesn't have to be a commercial business. It doesn't have to be the entirety of the property, any area, any portion of a property. And junk doesn't have to be what perhaps we would characterize as quote-unquote junk, but it's the storage of items, of vehicles, of equipment that here again is not ancillary to the primary purpose of the property, which you've indicated is farming. So, you know, my inclination is consistent with what my colleagues have indicated, which is that this would be characterized as a junkyard within the meaning of the zoning bylaw. So, I think the consensus is in that regard. The motion would have to be as follows. Motion would be to reverse the December 19, 2022 enforcement order of Building Commissioner Scott Shippey as requested in the application of Jeffrey and Sandra Cook. If we vote yes to reverse that order, then what we are doing is approving Mr. Cook's appeal, Mr. and Mrs. Cook's appeal. If we vote no, we are not reversing the order, and that order that was issued by Mr. Shippey stands.
Mr. Chairman, before you take that,
Public portion is over.
I'd like to say one more thing.
No, you can't. You can't.
I don't think that's right.
Well, unfortunately, that's how we operate, so.
Something needs to be said.
I'm sorry. Any questions here on the motion?
So the motion, we have two options to say yes
So again, the
to
motion.
reversing the 12/19/22 enforcement order by Mr. Shippey would approve the Cook's appeal.
Correct.
If we vote no, then
we-
Mr. Shippey's order stands.
Correct. This is the same discussion we had last summer with another matter.
Yes.
I went back and listened to it today just to make sure that I had the motion correct, so.
It confused me, too.
Any questions on your part, Kurt?
No.
So does somebody want to make that motion? And again, the motion would be to reverse the December 19, 2022 enforcement order of Building Commissioner Scott Shippey as requested in the application of Jeffrey and Sandra Cook.
Okay, I move to reverse the 12/19/22 enforcement order by Scott Shippey,
As requested in the application of
as
Jeffrey.
requested in the application by the Cooks.
Yes.
No, second it.
Second.
And again, a yes vote is to uphold Mr. and Mrs. Cook's appeal.
Understood.
A no vote is to side with Mr. Shippey's order, or to basically support Mr. Shippey's order.
Yep, understood.
Okay? Kim?
No.
Kurt?
No.
And Barney, no. You have a right to appeal. You know, we're going to write a decision. I'll probably draft it sometime next week. It'll be filed with the town clerk. You have the right to appeal. And the appeal must be taken within 20 days of the date on which the decision is filed with the town clerk. What I would hope would happen is that you sit down, whether you take an appeal or not, you sit down with Mr. Shippey and reach a decision as to what should or should not be there. This isn't the first time this has happened. I have a copy of the cease and desist order that was issued by Mr. Riccio in 2018. He had hoped to amicably resolve the issue. Apparently, that was not done to his satisfaction. But I would hope that you could sit down with Mr. Shippey
I think you're wrong on that. but-
and reach a resolution of this issue that would be satisfactory to him, to you, and to the neighborhood. But again, we'll draft the decision, we'll sign it, we'll file with the town clerk, and then from that point on, you have 20 days within which to exercise your right to appeal, if you so wish. Okay? Thank you.
Yes.
You want to take a couple minutes?
Yes, please. Okay, who's next? You're all next. That's Morris.
Drop some candy on the floor. I don't want you to step on it.
Is it time in between?
Yeah, we're taking a couple minutes.
Oh, we are?
Yeah. Oh, we have other matters.
What he does is he cuts down trees and moves dirt around. doing this appeal and he doesn't cut down any more trees. I'd like Scott to.
Yeah.
You want Betsy and I to come up right now? You want Betsy and I to come up?
Yeah, I know, but how, Bill,
On your property. He has, that's like 30-foot shipping containers. Those aren't little, those are huge.
shipping containers, no.
Did you see him?
Yes.
So there's a green one, there's one beside it, and there's other. There's a property. You know what to is, like 6 or 7 years. No way,
He's already gaining
Too emotional. 2 years ago. There was no 6 or 7 years old. They just started putting that pumpkin back 2 years ago. And what kind of fun? I have friends that are farmers. You ask them about the growing season, he'd be right. My friend that grows cranberries. You ask him when you start growing cranberries, when you harvest, he'd be right to the date.
Is he the one who's laying on Route 1 too? Where all the junk trucks are and all that stuff?
I don't think so, but
No. You know what I'm talking about though?
They were off.
It's like in that undeveloped strip of Route 1 when you go past where the motorcycle dealer is now.
yeah, I don't think he does.
Okay.
Because I looked at them.
Frank, when the rest of the board comes up, we'll start.
What's
When
that?
the rest of the
We
board
need the
gets
other
here, we'll
two
start.
back.
Anybody want any candy? Any chocolate?
No, thank you.
Got any? Diana?
I gave him one.
I don't eat this stuff. You gotta eat it.
Did you continue the billboard?
Excuse me?
Did you continue the billboard? First
Yeah,
one?
yeah. I don't know why Bob had to come here, but he was charging by the...
You're gonna have to make an announcement.
I gotta wait for these guys to get back.
Right, I'm connected on Zoom. Okay.
Diana, do you have the letter from Jesse Johnson? Is it here?
It should be in the, everything's on the top of the folder.
No, I'm not. No, it's not like that. It's more like for some reason, I just got a dip sick. Like,
This is Jesse's, this is
Yeah, no,
that-
is this one that I can have?
I'm like, why?
Okay.
I hadn't even
All right.
gotten worried.
new stuff that has to be in.
Okay.
Betsy,
All right,
nobody's
let's go.
better at being Betsy than Betsy. Be Betsy.
Sounds the same both sides. All right, the time being 6:50 p.m. The continued public hearing, Walnut Master Grand Lessee LLC requests a comprehensive permit pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B, to construct 200 units of rental housing for seniors. All 200 units, which will be affordable at no more than 80% of area median income. Property is situated on Walnut Street, Assessors Map 133, Parcel 23, in the R40 Residential and Agricultural District. Would somebody please close the door?
Billy?
Bill, close the door, please. All right, since since we met on March 9th, we've received 2 additional materials. One is an undated letter from Michael Matos of Walnut Master Ground Lessee LLC concerning a request to modify the Walnut Street housing site plan to provide for 2 4-story buildings, and a letter dated March 15, 2023 from Jesse Johnson of Weston and Sampson Engineers, Inc., responding to previously submitted comments from TEC, Inc., and various Town of Foxborough Department officials, boards, and committees. So I'd like a motion to waive the reading of the 2 items and enter them into the record of the hearing.
So moved.
Dave, second it?
Second,
Kim?
Yes.
Dave?
yes.
And Barney, yes. I want to go back to, actually, is this a good time to start with Mike's letter, Frank?
Yes.
Just to summarize it? Sure. Because I know there are people who probably have not had an opportunity to read it, so if you could summarize that letter.
Absolutely, and thank you again for having us and the opportunity to do that. So the purpose of my letter, and I apologize for not dating it, I think I sent it on this Tuesday, the 14th. But in any case, the purpose of the letter really was to address some of the concerns that we had heard at the last hearing, public comment period, specifically around the concept of, why can't you take the units that are in Building 3 and incorporate them into Buildings 1 and 2? And there's as easy as that sounds, there are real financial constraints and restrictions that wouldn't allow us to do that. And so originally, when we responded to the Housing Authority's request for proposals to provide up to the 200 units that was requested, we had a scenario where the unit mix was exactly the same. We had 3 buildings. Building 1 had 61 units, Building 2 with 80 units, and Building 3 with 59 units. The only thing that's changed since then was in the original RFP, we proposed Buildings 1 and 2 to be 4 stories instead of 3 stories. And the feedback we heard from the Housing Authority and the community was, we don't want 4-story at all on the site. So we reduced that down and went a little bit more horizontal. But the reason why we have the unit mix the way we do is really we backed into that, and Betsy can get down into the weeds and the detail a little bit more on this, is that we backed into those numbers based upon the qualified allocation plan from the state, DHCD, that has funding caps on low-income housing tax credit properties that are being developed and the additional subordinate debt resources that they have available that they're willing to provide. And they have per unit limitations of how many credits and how many sources that they're willing to provide, total development costs per project. And so in order to maximize the resources available to develop the site, we had to break down the site into what were feasible funding application sizes. So that's why, like we talked about at our first night of the hearing, the structure was developed so that way Building 1 is going to be a standalone funding application going to DHCD, and it supports 61 units. Similarly, Building 2, because it's a 4% tax credit project, which is not specifically capped on the tax credit side, but on the other sources, it would allow us to go up to 80 on that particular one, and then 59 for Phase 2, which is Building 3. We can't add more because we're already at 141 units in Phase 1. And again, if you add the units in there, now what you're doing is we're exceeding the cost caps for each building that for each individual funding application. So you have to think of each building as its own standalone funding application. And if you add units, you're adding cost, but that cost, there's no way to fund those costs for that application. And so that's why we sort of backed into the unit mix and the unit size based on the funding restrictions that are allowable by DHCD and their qualified allocation plan. So we just wanted to explain that to folks so they wouldn't think that we had the ability to do that, because if we did, we would, but we just can't. We have to spread it out, essentially, to make
So
it
essentially, you
feasible.
can't add any units to each each of the buildings themselves.
Because then it becomes, like I said, the cost, that added cost becomes unfundable, unfinanceable. We won't be able to fund that additional cost because we will have exceeded all of DHCD's cost caps that they allow for. Yeah.
Okay. Lorraine, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Because Lorraine had actually contacted me the day after, and then I spoke with Frank that afternoon, so that's what prompted,
Okay.
as well as the, the questions at that meeting.
Yeah, and I understand that question 100%. We, and it's all about communication, being able to explain it, and that's all. I know it's easy for us because we have to deliver those caps all the time, but I know a lot of folks don't, know that, so we wanted to make sure folks were aware of it, that's all.
Thank you.
Okay. Frank, go ahead, wherever you want to go now. Next.
Okay. I'd like to ask Jesse Johnson, of civil engineer, just to give us a little recap of where we are with regard to revisions to the plans and the consultant's comments. Jess?
Sure. Again, for the board, Jesse Johnson, Weston Sampson Engineers. So you referenced the letter I had submitted. Sorry for the late submission for you guys, but I wanted to get it to you after we had gotten all final comments internally, made sure that we had revisions done on the plans and calculations and everything. So basically what I want to show you in this review letter is that we've addressed all written responses and comments that we've gotten from all staff and peer reviews so far. So I've given you an itemized letter starting with the most comprehensive one from TEC that addresses civil comments and traffic comments. We did have communications with the reviewers prior, talking about some of the approaches we wanted to take on some of these comments. And I think you'll see if you read through it that essentially we've addressed everything in one form or another. A lot of it we've made modifications to the plans. There were only a couple items where we just said we'd like to take care of it later before we go to building permit because they're a little bit more intensive design. And as you basically go through a process after you get approvals at this level, you oftentimes will then drill down a little bit further on the designs and it might cause some further modifications. So we just rely on that stuff to happen prior to a final building permit application. So we'd ask for that consideration on a few of the items. But otherwise, we didn't take really exception to anything. And I also had conversations with some of the town officials to follow up on their comments, gave them my thoughts on, I talked about some of those last time, essentially the DPW comments and how we were hoping to address those, and I just put those in writing in here. So I would just say overall, again, we didn't take exception to everything. I think we've got everything formally addressed, and we'll follow up with the actual revised plans and calculations and updated traffic report after we hear from everybody and just make sure there's no other requested edits or changes.
So you'll actually provide us with not a complete set, but a revised set of plans?
That's right. We're waiting to have our first meeting with the Conservation Commission. We wanted to be respectful that they might have some questions or comments and just make sure we'd incorporate anything that would come back from them, which we're going on Monday night, and then I'll turn around quickly and have everything revised by next week and formally submitted.
Okay. Any questions for him?
And so there were a few things in here, and I'm not seeing them at the moment, but there were a few things in there that I think the town departments may want to take a look at again.
Sure.
And so we will have time to review what the town departments have to say to some of your comments.
Yeah, and I didn't want to speak for anybody. Obviously, we had casual conversations on a phone, but I didn't want to put that in here and say, per the DPW, I obviously want them to confer what I said as well.
Kurt, any questions?
Have we set a time for another site walk, or are we going to do that
No,
tonight?
we'll do that tonight. We got 2 or 3 things we got to establish. Go ahead, Lorraine.
So I just had a question on page 13 about the generator.
Sure.
So, the statement that residents struggle at the other 2 FHA properties during storms because there is no backup power, and the response indicates that there will be power maintained to pump stations and emergency lighting. Generator backup will also be provided for lighting and HVAC within the community room located in Building 1. So I think, when I think of this type of housing and the issues that have come up at the current locations, many people are there with health issues that require electricity in their units, and it creates issues. So is it possible to reconsider some expansion of that generator backup to individual units for HVAC and electricity?
So electricity will be available for emergency lighting, and then.
But within the units, though, is what I'm talking about.
What we're hearing is the cost impact from having a generator size to power up the HVAC for each building would be substantial. It would be a substantial cost, and they looked at it to provide it in a common space where they could fit most of the occupancy isn't for the full 200 units, but it's more than half, so that if people felt uncomfortable, they could come to at least a community room, which is connected to buildings 1 and 2. It's only the third building, those 59 units, that would have a little bit farther of a walk to get to it. But that was thought as just a compromise, if you will, to allow, and it's what they do in most of their facilities, I understand. It's actually better. They don't usually even provide the HVAC in most of the facilities. And I talked to DPW about that, and I understood where the comment came from. They said that they're seeing some problems, like you had echoed, in other parts of town, but they also realize that's not something we can ask you or force you to do, but we'd like to have you consider it. We can try to get an idea of what the cost impact is, but we're hearing that it's substantial to go up to the next level generator that could do that.
It would be a very large, substantial generator unit you would need to provide air conditioning for those 3 buildings. Yeah.
So that's why they even broke it out to have one for each of the buildings as
Right,
well. We were
right.
originally going to have one centralized generator, but that was cost prohibitive as well, so it's thought to break it up in chunks of 3.
Thank you.
Dave, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. And I'll have to preface this that I did not have a chance to really totally review your letter, but I wanted to make sure that, that we were going to get a profile of what the site would look like when built out with the buildings and things. Was that addressed?
That's to come, yep.
Okay,
We're
that's
going
coming.
to show you something
And the
tonight on
other
that.
thing I had inquired about was looking into, and I guess it would be getting a state or somebody to provide sound barriers. And they have a name for those, but I can't remember what it is. Is that something that you could talk about or look into? What's involved with having sound barriers put up on 95? Who would make that request?
That's a state and federal thing.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about that last meeting. I think it was Mr. Galley who had raised that. And clearly, to put sound barriers up, we would have to take out vegetation. So we would lose some of the natural ability to not just buffer sound, but also to beautify the property, so to speak. Sound barriers themselves would, along the interstate, would be outside of our purview. We couldn't require that. And I think anything on the property would be, it's something we can obviously ultimately talk about and determine, but there would be detriments to doing that.
I understand that. I think as far as vegetation removal, of course, that would be not on the applicant's property. No, he really doesn't have control over that, I believe. As far as, I just want, maybe it's an easy thing to get sound barriers put up, because not only will they potentially be effective to the neighborhood, but also the residents of the project. Maybe somebody could take on the task of find out what's involved. Is it a simple thing, Maybe
Is the landscape
planner might know.
the landscape that was proposed? I know we were talking about plantings that were along the properties, or I shouldn't say along the properties, but in back of here, sort of facing where the North High Street was. Were there going to be plantings, though, on the other, sort of surrounding the entire?
Yes, the
Area?
plantings are proposed
Yeah.
basically along that access road.
Okay.
The landscape guy, he's on Zoom.
Oh, okay.
I like to be referred to as landscape architect, but I'll take landscape guy, that's fine.
Sorry.
I mean, I'm a zoning guy, and Frank's a lawyer guy or attorney guy, so.
Yes, we are actually providing evergreen screening around the entire perimeter of the site. So not only will that help to screen the site visually from the major highway and also the abutting neighbors, but it will also help significantly reduce the amount of sound that breaks through the site. Because as you know today, the site is fully deciduous woodland with very little evergreen understory planting. Yes, we're removing some trees which act as a sound barrier, but these evergreen trees, once they become mature, and we're proposing to put them in a rather large size on day one, will definitely help with the flanking of the sound from the highway. Plus, the buildings will also help to distort that sound as well.
I mean, I don't know what sound barriers themselves cost, per square foot or per linear foot, so I would imagine it's fairly expensive.
Yeah, and I think we had talked about this last time too. Probably the most effective location for it would be along the travelway, along 140, and that is out of our jurisdiction to be a Mass DOT thing. And I honestly don't even know what's involved with trying to get those permitted. I've never tried it. But it's not something we have control over.
Okay. Dave, other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Anything else here?
I do have a few other questions. As I was reading through all of this, it looks as if the lease term is 99 years. What happens then?
Reverts back to the housing authority, the property.
Okay. Okay, and I am curious about looking at the Conservation Commission's comments, referring to proposed work within a 25-foot buffer zone near the wetlands. I'm really curious, after you've had your meeting with Conservation, just to hear what they have to say a little bit more about that. I wanted
Sure.
to see, after we have a little bit more, you have had an answer, and I'd love to hear from them, whether that's something that you discussed with them on Monday night or not. I'm looking forward to having that piece of information later on. And when we are doing the site walk, I don't know if we're able to get over to that sort of area. I'm not sure we were going to go over there or not go over there, or how much poison ivy is over there. Always my question. But that's something I would be interested in talking about later on. And I guess not necessarily a question, but I know since this one is moving on a lot, I have a little bit of a concern. And that is, I definitely want to make sure we reserve a little space for us to talk about the number of parking spaces.
Yep.
And what is enough. I'm just wondering, how many, what if a number of residents have visiting nurses during the day, or nurses that are there, hospice nurses that are there overnight, and then there's a birthday party and, that sort of thing. So I want to just make sure we reserve a little time to discuss parking spaces.
Okay. I've got a couple questions, or maybe just one question about the stormwater basins.
Sure.
Exactly what are they? Is the water directed in that direction, et cetera?
Yeah. So it's a fairly conventional system. We have, I think I mentioned last time, we have obviously naturally sloping grades. We don't want to fight those grades. So we started with exploring having a basin put near the bottom of the site, if you will, and working up from there. And what we determined that was we need two basins. We need one just uphill of a little bit. They flank, if you will, both sides of the main access way. So we're picking up a lot of the runoff that's coming onto the property, generated by the access driveway around Building 3 itself, and a good portion of the runoff that's going overland in the amenity space behind Buildings 1 and 2. Most of that is directed to the first basin, and then everything on the other side, those Buildings 1 and 2, the parking area, is being directed to the downhill, the furthest one downslope. But we also have those connected to each other, so if the first basin uphill isn't able to keep up with it, it's directing overflow to the bigger basin downhill. And we did our testing to find out where the groundwater is, to make sure we have a minimum separation. Mass stormwater guidelines, local guidelines require at least a 2-foot separation. We have an excess of over 4. to make sure it's going to perform as designed. And then I think I'd mentioned too, we really made sure we incorporated the higher rainfall amounts, higher than what the state and the local requirements are. And then we also said, well, not just reduce the rate, let's make sure we reduce the volume on top of that. So that we kind of added some belt suspenders on that stormwater because we know sometimes that can be of concern. And the fact that we're just uphill of Mass DOT's jurisdiction, we know sometimes they get a little bit nervous about anything that's tilted their way, even though it already goes that way. It's already drainage patterns are established going to their right of way. We just want to make sure that we have a bulletproof design when we go to talk to them later.
And what's the depth of the two basins?
The maximum depth for bottom of the basin to the overflow weir itself, we don't ever go over 5.5 feet. And you start to get into close to dam regulations when you get to a 6-foot depth. So we made sure that we're at a maximum 5.5. And I believe we have our first intake, if you will. So the water will fill up from the bottom. And we try to get the first intake fairly low to make sure that you don't have a ponding level that's after the storm is over that's going to be too deep. I think our maximum ponding level on both of those basins is 2 feet, but then we do calculations to make sure that that level goes out before the next storm is supposed to come in, which is they give you 3 days. They wanted to make sure that within 3 days that basin's empty, so it's ready for another storm to come on top of it.
So assuming storm comes in and they, fill to capacity, is there ability to pump the water out?
Yeah, you would have to, part of the operation and maintenance plan that you have to provide, which we did, and it was peer reviewed, that'll work into the operation and maintenance of the whole facility. Part of that is that you do your inspections periodically, like in the spring, you got to go through and check all your catch basins, make sure to clean the sediment. Mm-hmm. Just basically make sure it's refreshed every year so that it is going to perform the way you want it to. But in the event that something happens, you got a catastrophic situation, they would have to obviously have a plan in place where they would be able to go. I don't know if they pump it out. You actually would probably want to keep that water in there as much as possible. The bigger thing that we would be concerned about is if you have a blowout, let's say, from the berm because it's built up. But that's where you make sure the detail is done right to have a solid core in the berm, and that you also make sure that during construction it's being witnessed to be constructed to the detail and the standards.
So there's a berm that would be surrounding the basins themselves?
That's right.
And
We cut into it as much as you can, and then you got to take that material, put it off on the sides, and start to build the berm around it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And that berm would just be, what, dirt?
Yeah, it's
soil?
just an earthen berm.
Okay.
Yeah. But you make sure, again, that you have the right core in there so you don't have water seepage that could eventually make it break out.
And would they be planting? I guess maybe this is the landscape guide, but would they be planting?
It's a combination, yeah. You'll have water-tolerant grass
Landscape
species.
architect.
And then you have plantings on top of that that would help solidify it and get the root structure in there.
Okay.
Yes.
And you're meeting with planning on Monday, you said?
Conservation Monday.
Okay, and if there's an updated site plan required, you provide us with that, I presume?
Yeah, that's why I'm holding it idle until I hear from them, and then, but all the comments that you have in here, the plans and calcs are all teed up and ready to be submitted.
I do appreciate something that you had told us last time, which is that you have designed the stormwater above and beyond ahead of the regs being updated, which I
Yes.
very much appreciate.
Sure, that's kind of our standard in our office right now, because we know it's coming. It's just, got to get in front of it.
I know Paige is there. Paige, do you have any questions? I guess not.
I do not.
Okay, that's what I guessed. Scott, any?
I do not.
Okay. Any questions from the public on the matters that we've discussed with Mr. Johnson? Yes, sir. Why don't you come to the podium?
Ed Galley, 56 North High Street. You guys mentioned about the walkthrough. I know it got canceled for obvious reasons. You guys are welcome to use my property too and park in my driveway if you need to get down to the woods.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to note that, go on a sunny day and so you can see all the markings for where the road's going to begin. You can see it from North High Street, and it's just to show you how thin it is there. So the buffer would be greatly appreciated if you could just really emphasize that in a strong way, because it's like we can see right through, because all the pine trees, all that stuff, that's what you're cutting out. What we're left with is just all dead forest.
There's no, there are no pine trees, no spruce trees at all on the property now?
Ironically, right where they tagged everything
Mhm.
is where it all cuts off. So they're gonna cut out all the pine trees, and what's left there is all pretty thin. And it goes along that whole edge. So it's like, when you show it on the screen, on your, the mock-up that you guys make, it shows everything's pretty thick, but it's not. So when you get down there, you'll just see, there's really zero pine trees through that whole line. You guys will see for yourself when you look at it.
Okay.
But just want to let you know, you're welcome to use the property. I live right next to the process, and I know you're going to look at their barn and stuff like that. But that way there, if you're going to drive up from Walnut or walk, you can park in our driveways as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
I think that's a good segue to the viewscape.
Thank you. I actually wanted to invite Jonathan just to reiterate the plantings that are planned around, which includes evergreen trees that are fast
Hold
in
on a
growth.
second. Do you have a question or a comment?
I do, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Hold on. And just,
Paul Morrison, South Grove Street. I got a question on a couple of things here. The 200 units, are they all going to be for seniors for 99 years?
disability, individuals who are disabled and seniors.
Okay, it's not going to be, somebody's daughter or a son or something coming in with 3 kids in tow, and we're
Well,
going to have
they're only-
school
they're-
buses stopped there.
Yeah, they're only one bedroom. Each unit, as I understand, is only one bedroom. And it's intended, again, for individuals who are disabled and individuals who are 55 and older.
You can guarantee that?
That will be one of the conditions we'll put in our decision if we approve this, yes.
Okay. Because do the Foxborough seniors have priority on the list?
Yes. To a
Okay.
certain percentage, correct?
Occupancy up to 70%.
70%, yeah.
Now, do the Foxborough seniors maintain priority?
I think it's just the first go-around, isn't it?
Initial lease-up, the state limits the preference for that initial lease-up to be up to 70%.
There's a lot of seniors in town. They're probably looking forward to this. And I think they should maintain seniority.
I don't think we can legally.
CD doesn't allow that.
And security. Who's going to provide security for it?
We do a couple different things. We have a security camera system.
And
needs to
actually,
be on a
Betsy,
microphone.
you might want to come up to the microphone, sir.
So I'm with the PB Properties, the management company, and at our similar senior projects, we have a comprehensive camera system, interior and exterior lighting, and and in other situations, if we feel we need to have security, we outsource it to a private security firm.
That's too bad. Maybe you can have a private security, maybe hire Foxborough people first for the jobs. That would be a nice thing.
We
know?
actually are committed to having local vendors involved in the entire project.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. No generators, that's a concern too, or a generator that doesn't power enough for the air conditioning. You're going to have some old people here, and, they're not going to be too happy when they're sweating, I think there should be 3 different generators, on site. And it could be,
We
you
are
got
gonna
natural
have
gas on
3.
the site,
Yeah, we are going to have 3 generators.
Natural
One
gas?
for each building.
or diesel?
I believe they're natural gas. Yeah, they'll be
Okay,
gas-fired.
get some big units on a pad, and next thing you know, you'll have no problem. But I don't know, can the seniors still have wall units in the window?
Well, it's central AC, so they won't have a unit because they won't need it except for in emergency situations.
Okay. All right. Well, I just hope it works out for the town, I think it's another 40B project, but
Oh,
what
it
do I
is.
know?
It is.
Barney, just a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we do the walkthrough, when could we have a discussion about just the configuration of the buildings themselves? Would that be after the walk?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
The next meeting.
all right, thanks.
For clarification, Ryan, what do you mean by configuration, where they're
Just,
located?
yeah, where, how they're located, understanding that there have to be these three in this exact size and number of units per, just, depending on how things are laid out, potential for maybe making some geometric changes, I guess,
For what purpose?
to move them
Away from?
away from High Street.
I think they worked a great deal to try to do that as best they can. Jess, can you address that?
Yeah, the challenge we saw was getting Building 3 closer to Building 2 in the grades. It was we already have Building 1 and 2 locked, if you will. They're tied together. And what UTIL had to do, and the challenges the architect had to deal with, was we told them, look, you have a grade change on the site. We have to do something with that. We either have to step outside or inside, and they thought it would be better to do it inside, even though that takes away a lot of valuable space inside. But then when we got to Building 3, after they'd made all those concessions on the architectural side, we really had to space it far enough away to allow for ADA access, proper ADA access, and allow for a grade change. Otherwise, we were going to have to cut into the ground even more. We've got a 4 to 5 foot cut already on the parking lot and the foundation, and we were getting worried about trying to go even deeper than that, given the soil types that are out there. We don't expect ledge for the foundation, but we don't know for certain. So again, it's trying to strike that balance. And if we shift it over away, if you will, sliding it towards the wetland area, then that did nothing but get us closer to those wetlands and also infringe upon the amenity space. So that's why we said, well, why don't we angle the building one way? So we admittedly have a pinch point. We do. And that's where I think the crux is. But we're hoping that, given that the other corner is so much farther away, over 200 feet, just from the property line itself, that was going to make the difference. And I think in the images you'll see, just the first one, you'll see the distances from the closest houses.
Okay.
And we're, again, just showing you to that apex, that worst case scenario, and then everything from there we thought improved enough. I'm having a hard time finding another way to honestly make it a little bit better. Because even if I get you 10 feet, it's not going to have an impact that you think.
I guess
Jesse,
what
I'll just add to that when we graded the site, we were cognizant that we're removing some existing trees that are there today. And we didn't want to, make that removal of trees even greater than it needed to be. So we wanted to hold the road and the buildings where they were, and then tie in the new grades into the existing grades as quickly as possible. So it didn't mean that we have to remove more trees than we needed to. So again, we were cognizant of that as well.
I guess I'm looking at it from, within the outline of the existing layout. Building number 1 is L-shaped. If you lengthened the bottom of the L, that moves everything to my left. Building 2 goes over with it. And can Building 3 also go over then?
So you're saying
And down.
slide Building 3 over, like I was suggesting, to the left?
I'm
Or
saying...
you're saying to bring it down the hill more?
Yeah, so L-shape number 1 building, the L becomes longer. The height is cut maybe a third or a half.
Or the length, are you saying?
I mean, the length gets cut. 2 can slide that length closer to keep, because you have those buildings with that entrance there. And that,
I think what she's suggesting, Jesse, is if you were to lengthen this, you're then moving this building over move that over a bit, and then you can perhaps reposition
yeah.
that.
And, with the idea that whatever amenities would be affected would have to be relocated or reconfigured, but, trying to still operate within that, configuration as you have it as much as possible.
So the buildings and the floor plans are really locked in. We don't have any wiggle room with the buildings, so it's really a matter of what can we do with those shapes and how can we configure the shapes. Those buildings are so far down the line in design right now that even a minor change would really blow us up in some some big ways on timing and otherwise. So I'm trying to think of another way to maybe increase the screening, I guess, if you will. And I think maybe if we can go through some of the images that we'll show you, and I think they're honest in the way we presented in our initial initial planting state for the screening, and then what it'll look like down the road, but then also representing the existing vegetation the way it is. We're not showing any evergreens that are there now, because that's what we didn't see there, and to what was just mentioned, probably right, those are going to be removed in that initial construction. And then I think the site walk too would help.
Yeah.
Just reinforce that we are we're gonna take care of that view as best we can. Because honestly, moving that building 5 or 10 feet would have a huge impact on the design, but I don't think it's gonna change where somebody would be sitting in their backyard and go, that really made a difference, that 5 or 10 feet. It's the buildings are there, and now it's just a matter of, well, how do we get rid of the view of the buildings versus sliding them back and forth 5 or 10 feet.
And I'll just add to that we try to, where possible, we're proposing native plant material, but along that edge on North High, we're proposing green giant arborvitaes, which are really vigorous growers. They grow 3 feet per year, and they have a mature height of approximately 45 to 60 feet tall. So, within a few years of these trees being planted, again, we're going to propose to plant fairly large trees on day one, but within, 5 to 10 years of these trees being in the ground, there's going to be a green wall, permanent green wall, albeit a natural vegetated one, but it will be a green wall between these houses and the site.
Is there any ability to do plantings within the setback, within the 25-yard setback that are setback from the North High Street homes of evergreens?
Yeah, there are. That's why I think the site walk would be good. We can look for opportunities where it would obviously be better if we were up higher and closer to the abutters and planting something right there. That's absolutely an opportunity that we could supplement.
Okay.
And I think that'll probably be, we could be selective when we're walking out there and look, this is an area where maybe there's a dead tree, let's get this out of the way and we can put something right there, whether it's on our side of the property line or not. I think
We'll be on your side of the property line,
Yeah.
but yeah, okay. But we'll wait for the
Yeah, the
sidewalk.
walkthrough would be telling.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Guess?
All right,
You
thank
can
you.
start.
I'll jump right into it. We have a couple of dimensions from houses closest to Building 3 at that pinch point, from 60 North High Street, 58 and 56, and the sort of the corner that's closest to Building 3 measured out. So we're in the range of 345 to 337 at the tightest with 58, and then 353 at the other end of the spectrum. I think there's a pretty healthy distance. A lot of the conversation I'm hearing has to do with like the lack of undergrowth, especially during the fall and winter when there's no foliage to be able to see through deeply into the site, and that's what we're trying to address with discussions about planting. So I'll walk through kind of sequentially what things that start to happen with a view towards a summer condition and then a winter condition. So sort of the peak hiding with the foliage and then less so. But here's sort of the existing summer view. So that'll be existing condition and post-construction of phase 1, which is building 1 and 2. So very, no impact really. We're over at building 1 and 2. Similarly during winter. But then we move on and we start to build building 3, and that of course is of more concern. And so this is a view post-construction completion of phase 2, building 3. And you'll see, behind the barn there, the 15-foot trees planted. So they're coming in tall, as Jonathan and Jesse have been saying. And so you see building 3 behind the trees. You see that planting starting to come in. And then, acknowledging that when things are being built and they're done, building 3, we cut the ribbon. that winter will be the most exposure that the community will have visually, because the trees are new and the foliage is down. So this is a representation of that. And you'll see the evergreens there are still, they're growing, they're there, they're planted.
They're at the second story level, just to give you context?
Yes.
The top of the trees are covering
Yeah,
the
if you
second
can see
story
it. I don't know if you can see the mouse, but there. All right, so we're moving on to 10 years because these are fast-growing trees, as Jonathan had mentioned. I won't try to repeat their name. Arborvitae? Okay, I tried.
Arborvitae.
Vitae. But they grow tall, and we're saying standing 45 feet at least after 10 years, so it's a pretty healthy coverage. So again, a summer view and winter view, we've got a lot of visual screening. You're not even seeing windows because it's going up to that attic level where there's no occupancy.
You were going to show us something about elevations as well? You know, where the
And I'll
building
just
would be in relation-
add that, as Jesse mentioned, there's nothing to stop us from planting some trees within the existing woodland on the higher side of the grade. So if we do that, then you won't see any of these buildings once these trees grow.
Okay. So any questions here?
No, I have none, just again, the site walk will be very telling.
Yeah.
David, any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
That's it for us for this evening.
Okay, well, we just got some administrative stuff to work on.
I do actually have one more question, and that is for Mike. I've been reading some things about Silicon Valley Bank, and just wondering if any of the financing was with them? Fabulous. Thank you.
Or Signature Bank.
Right.
Your signature or Credit Suisse?
Almost forgot. Any questions from the public?
Can I just ask when you're going to do the walk?
We're going to talk about that next.
Okay.
Okay. So we got,
Barney, I have the dates available next week of the senior bus. If you'd like
Okay.
to start with that.
all right, so,
You have to be over 65 to get on that?
well, I guess it'll be just me and Lorraine and Dave. Go
We're gonna
ahead.
go park at the
So
gallery.
Monday, 1:45, Tuesday, 1 to 2, or 1:30 to 2:30, or 2:45 to 3:45. Wednesday, anytime between 11:45 and 2:45, but Paige is not available on Wednesday. And Thursday, between 11:30 and 12:30.
I am not available on Wednesday. I'll be in training.
All right, so Wednesday is
Monday?
out for town officials,
So we're on Monday and Tuesday, right?
or Thursday.
Or Thursday.
Monday, let me just,
I think Thursday worked. We were talking before, and we were conferring. I think for us, Thursday was lining up a little bit better. I don't know if that works for you guys.
Thursday's good for me, too.
Is that still the case? Tuesday?
Thursday at 11:30.
Thursday at 11:30. How long do we think we'll be there?
Well, you got the bus for an hour, 11:30 to 12:30.
Okay. Yes, the 23rd works. Sorry, Dan, you said 11:30 to 12:30?
Yes.
So meet at Town Hall at 11:30
Um,
for the bus, for the span?
Yeah. If you think it's going to be more than an hour, then we had said that you could take your own cars, park on Walnut Street, and Chief Grace will provide a police car to park on Route 140, and Chief Grace would put a police car at the one on the end.
So we have parking options, so probably,
My recommendation is going, because if you only have it an hour, it's going to take, everyone shows up at 11:30, we're not going to get there
Right.
15 minutes, let's say. You know, it might take a couple trips. My recommendation is we can carpool.
meet there.
We can all meet at my office and take a few
You
cars
can,
there.
you could still meet here and carpool from here.
That's fine, let's do that, yeah.
You know, because sidewalks can sometimes be 30 minutes, sometimes it can be an hour and a half,
Yeah.
2 hours, you know. Depending, has anyone looked at the weather?
The weather next week is supposed to be okay,
Okay,
according to Channel 5.
so I'd hate to be rushed.
Yes.
I have a big driveway. I mean, you don't need to, if you can't park on Walnut, that's all I'm saying.
Well,
I'll be home, so.
okay, thank you.
And there's a pad that goes right next to the barn you were just looking at.
So you want to say Thursday, 11:30?
Meet at the
Is
site?
that good for you?
If we're not restricted by time, is it better in the afternoon? I only ask because I've been trying to get a meeting on that Thursday morning for about 2 weeks, and I just locked it in today for 10. I could be here as soon as 12:30.
I mean, I'd prefer the afternoon myself. I've got a heating system going in on Thursday, so. What's good for you, Frank?
Whatever time, the afternoon's probably better too.
Afternoon's better for me.
Say 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock?
Is that good?
That sounds good to me.
I have a hard stop at 2:30.
So why don't we make it, say 12 o'clock?
Yeah, I have a hard stop at 1:30.
Can you do 12 or 12:30?
Having
I can do
dental
12:30.
surgery.
Okay, would that be good?
I have a hard stop at 1:30.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think we were down
Do
to
it.
Monday or Tuesday.
I could do Thursday. If you want to do 12, we can do 12. Yeah,
Yes?
12 is great.
okay.
Yes.
Dave, would you be able to join us, Dave, or you don't think?
Well, I'll make an attempt. As you know, my mobility is not very good to be doing a sidewalk. But I am going to make an attempt to be up there. I was interested in the offer of Gentleman's Driveway where you get a view looking down in. I'm going to try, but if not, take good notes.
We'll take pictures.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Paige is good Thursday.
Page is good as Thursday.
Scott,
The
you
weather
wanna join
said
us?
it's
You were good on
supposed to be
Thursday?
49 with a 16% chance of rain, so.
Okay. So Thursday, next Thursday, the 23rd at 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll follow you, file with you those viewscapes so you can have those. We'll try to bring some with us to that. Because I think looking at them on paper does a better justice than looking up on the screen. You can really see the differences.
So the other thing would be, again, we're having a working session meeting on the 29th at 1. Jesse, if you can't make it down then, we could
No, I got
probably.
it.
Oh, you can? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good. That'll be at Town Hall. The next meeting, I will have a conflict on April 6th, and I apologize because I hadn't checked my schedule before we set the meeting dates up. And the conflict is probably such that I probably would have to be out of here by about 4:30, 4:45. So I think Thursday afternoon would probably not be good. Diana, you said we had the 3 through the 5th available?
If you wanted to do in the daytime, are you still talking daytime? Because they had various committees and stuff. Some start at 6, some start at 6:30. So we just have to be out of here before then.
3rd is good.
I'm sorry?
The 3rd is good, Monday? Is that good?
Is Monday the 3rd? Or is it Tuesday?
Monday's the
Monday's
3rd.
the
Yeah,
Monday
Monday
would be
the
the
3rd.
third. I will be out of town.
I mean, the 3rd would be good for me, the 4th would be good for me. Say late afternoon. And I think what I want to concentrate on then would be to review the revised plan and answer any questions that we hadn't thought of yet. Answer any questions, obviously, from those from the public that would be here, and try to tie up some loose ends. But the 3rd would be good for me. Actually, is there a
Bonnie?
meeting that night here?
The conservation meeting at 7.
Okay. But if we were to start, say, 4:30, 5 o'clock, we got here until
You're good till
conservation starts.
6:30, yeah.
For Monday?
4:30?
That's good for me.
Is that good for you?
Bonnie,
Monday, I think that works. Yeah.
Bonnie,
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
okay, I'm just going to excuse myself for a minute to get my calendar,
Okay.
okay? I'll be
What
right back.
time, April 3rd are you thinking?
Late in the afternoon, maybe 4:30?
Because Diana is not available at 4:15.
Oh, yeah. I have a different thing that day.
We have another meeting.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
what about
Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
It's even better. You can do Tuesday the 4th, same time, 4:30.
Tuesday, I am not free until 4:30, and I only have 4:30 until 6:30.
I think we'd have to be out of here.
On the
when you-
4th?
After
Yeah, that's,
6:30,
yeah.
Okay.
The selectmen meet that night, I think, or the select board. So let's wait for Dave.
You're gonna miss the thing at Shuffle Town on the 3rd.
Mr. Chairman, just Kevin Powers, Housing Authority, just to clarify, for the walkthrough, does everyone meet up here, or does everyone meet down at Walnut Street?
I think we're meeting down at Walnut.
Okay.
I mean, you can
Unless
certainly meet.
Unless you want to carpooling is
Yeah.
still encouraged, because there's not a lot of parking. I mean, unless you want to use all these neighbors'
I-
parking spots.
I'm just looking for for some direction.
Well, I'll tell you what, Kevin, I'm going to come to Town Hall, and whoever is at Town Hall will arrange to come together. If you want to meet us there, you're more than welcome.
All right, but we're free to do whatever.
Yeah, in other words, we're not relying on the van,
All right.
okay? If you want to go to Frank's office and meet with him, well, I shouldn't invite you.
I'm entirely indifferent.
So we would be able to park, though, ourselves on Walnut. Just because I do have a hard stop that day, I might just park on
Yep.
Walnut.
Yep, and I gather we have some kind people who've offered the use of their driveways.
So what is better? Should I,
North High is a better place to park.
North High, okay, so
Yeah.
perhaps,
The chief really doesn't want people parking on Walnut Street.
that's totally fine. So I might afterwards ask someone if I can park in their driveway, if that's all right, okay.
There's also a big drainage ditch on Walnut Street that's kind of a little tough.
Yeah, you have to jump over it. It's-
You don't end up in that ditch.
Dave, we're talking now about Tuesday, the 4th.
That's the site walk.
No, that would be for the next meeting.
Okay, we can do that.
Say around 4:30 on the 4th?
Okay, 4:30. Yeah. That'll be the continuation of this hearing.
Yep. So,
Now, where are you guys with the site walk that I may not be able to go to anyhow?
so I'll talk to you about that, about getting it, Dave, but the sidewalk would be the 23rd. That'll be next Thursday at noon. The next meeting would be April 4 at 4:30.
Good.
All right.
All right, so why don't we,
All right.
And,
Yeah, I think that works out too.
okay, so Kim, you want to make a motion to continue the hearing to the April 4?
So moved.
Dave, second it?
Second,
Kim,
Yes.
Dave,
yes.
and Barney, yes, so we're all set. So
We'll see you Thursday,
yeah, so next Thursday, and then we have the week after
the 29th,
on the waivers, and then
the 6th,
the
and
4th.
then we'll continue it to the 20th,
Correct.
your next round.
Yep.
That's great.
Okay, good.
And
Thank you.
and
Thank
we'll,
you.
Thank you.
get to Diane, all those viewscapes a few guys ago.
All right, I want to take 5 minutes before we start the next matter.
Yes, thank you. And I am going to go speak to some of the neighbors just for parking purposes for the walk,
What's the next matter?
site walk.
Moore Street.
I can take 3 other people with me as well.
Okay.
Well, you know, actually, we can get credit to those.
speaking right now, he's still going.
Hopefully, there's none that day, but in general, for life. Thank you.
All right, you guys ready?
Yes.
I love this.
Oh, wait. I have the wrong stuff.
The time being 7 p.m., we have the continued public hearing. 119 Moore Street Realty Trust requests a comprehensive permit under the local initiative program pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B, Sections 20 to 23, to construct 52 condominium residential units, 25% of which will be affordable to households earning not more than 80% of the area median income. Property is situated at 119 Moore Street in the General Industrial District and is in the future Aquifer Area Overlay District. Let's see, we have the four of us here, Lorraine, Kim, Kurt, and me. Dave is on Zoom. Paige, you're on Zoom, correct? You're there? Paige is there, and Judy Barrett is there. Although Dave is here, and is a regular member of the board, because he has missed 2 meetings, he cannot vote on this matter. He can, however, participate on the matter, and the voting members will be Kim, Kurt, and me. And I just want to remind people that we closed the public hearing at our last meeting, so there's no public interaction. Again, the public hearing has been closed. There's no public interaction. I've got one administrative matter, and then we can get into the sort of the meat of the meeting. We have an invoice from Environmental Partners for the period December 31, 2022 to January 27, 2023 in the amount of $487.50. So I need a motion to approve payment for that amount.
So moved.
Kurt?
Second.
Again, I got to do everything by roll call. Kim?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
And Barney, yes. The total amount that we've been billed by Environmental Partners is $24,197.75. So that is slightly less than their initial estimate of $26,000.
Yeah, Diana forwarded me that the other day. Thank you.
So since the February 16 hearing session, because the public hearing was closed at our February 16th hearing, any additional communications that we may have received are not part of the public record. That includes the revised 36-unit site plan that was submitted to us on March 15th. And assuming we approve the permit, the applicant can either submit that as part of the final plans that would be required by the decision, or can request a modification of the decision to substitute that for the plans that we were talking about last month and are referenced in the decision. If you do request modification, that would have to be done after the 20-day appeal period has lapsed. And, of course, the board would then need to make a determination whether the modification was substantial or insubstantial. But I'll leave that to the applicant's discretion at this point in time. So before we proceed into discussion, I would just like to take a few moments to express appreciation to several individuals. Number one, the various individuals and environmental partners that acted as our peer consultants. Number two, to Judy Barrett. I didn't always accept Judy's advice, but I always took it into consideration. I always considered it valuable, and I appreciate all of her comments, thoughts, insights, advice, assistance, and of course all of her work on preparing the draft decision. So thank you, Judy. It really should go without saying, but I'll say it anyhow. I really appreciate the work that Diana has done on this matter. She's probably gone above and beyond the call of duty in answering my, how many phone calls a day? Including yesterday when Diana was taking a vacation day. So Diana deserves a couple of gold stars just for putting up with my phone calls. Like to thank Paige Duncan for all of Paige's assistance and support and advice. I think at times Paige was probably questioning why this grumpy old man was taking up residence in her office. But she never evicted me. She never called upon Scott to issue an enforcement order getting me out of the office. But most of all, to my colleagues on the zoning board, I appreciate your assistance, support, advice, time, effort, etc. I'm proud of the work that we've done, despite some of the criticisms we received, and I'm appreciative of the opportunity to have served with each of you, not just on this matter, but in general. So thank you very much. So we received on Tuesday, in response to the motion that we approved at the last meeting, a draft decision. There's been a lot of work that's been done since Tuesday morning in reviewing it, correcting commas, spacing, and the like. What we do have is a fairly comprehensive decision relative to this particular matter. Again, I'm appreciative of the work that was put in relative to bringing us to this point. From my perspective, this decision covers the various matters that need to be covered with respect to any comprehensive permit, and in particular with the issues that have been presented with respect to this particular application. Judy, I don't know if you want to say a few things relative to the decision?
Mr. Chair, I think between you and Paige and Diana and me, and I'm not sure who else may have had their hands on it. I think the decision reflects what the board had discussed. I think that my opinion is it's a certainly fair decision. I think it's important for people to remember that the board really could have just shut this down and did not do that, and gave it a fair shot. So, the decision reflects all of that. I think the conditions are reasonable. I don't have anything else to add. I'm happy to be whatever help you need tonight, Barney, but I think the decision stands for itself. I think it's fine. It's well done, and it's well organized, and it's fair.
Okay, thank you. Paige, any comments or questions on your part?
Not at all, no.
Any questions or comments here? Well, any questions here?
I do have, not sure whether this is a question or a comment, but I do have some things I wanted to possibly add in for conditions or questions about conditions. So I don't know if that's now or if that's later.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we make a motion?
Occupancy permit.
And then we can discuss whether any amendments are necessary or appropriate. Okay? So I'm going to make the motion to grant a comprehensive permit for the premises situated at 119 Moore Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts, subject to the conditions of the board's comprehensive permit decision and the waivers that are set forth in Exhibit A of such decision. So I need someone to second the motion?
Second.
Okay? Go ahead.
No.
No, we're not voting on it yet.
Oh. I'm ready to say
So
that.
if you have any...
Now to do it.
Amendments,
Okay, so looking at, some of them are in D, some of them are in E, and then some of them I was not sure where they would go. So in D, number 4, it refers to a community contact. And so who will be the community contact, and how would contact be made by the community?
I'm sorry, Kim, where are you?
Sorry, D,
Page 16.
thank you.
Oh, D.
It's D1, number 4.
D1, number 4.
So community contacts, on-site contacts to address neighborhood/community concerns during construction. So how would they do that? How would the community do that? Just wanted a little bit more detail. That was my first one. So I can, we can just go through my list and then we can talk about them afterwards. Okay, and then also in D, number 12. Hang on, and that was page 18. Visual on-site soil and groundwater observation and screening by an environmental professional. And it continues, it's quite long. So if something were found, I guess I'm afraid that something might be found during the construction process. It's reported, construction continues, and then we have a homeowners association that's now responsible for remediation. That's my worry. So is there something that we could put in as a condition that remediation costs and oversight of remediation is not to be passed to the HOA?
Okay.
Not sure how you would do that. Okay, and then going on to E, also on page 18. Let me see, number 7, I believe. On-street parking of motor vehicles shall be restricted to one side of such roadway. I think what we had been talking about with public safety was, well, first of all, no parking on turns at all. I believe that's what public safety had said, so I wanted to see if we could amend that. No parking on any turns. And then the other thing that had been mentioned at that meeting, whether it was October, September, I can't remember, parking restrictions to one side of the road to be temporary. And public safety also asked us to define temporary in the HOA. So that would be something we could possibly discuss. Would we say that temporary is 6 hours, 4 hours, 10 hours, something like that? While we're at it, should we discuss having HOA documents restrict the number of vehicles that are allowed to be parked at each unit or for each unit? And the November 16th, 2022 Environmental Partners Letter had, quote, MUTCD compliant chevron markers in an illuminated curve sign, W1-2L, at the horizontal curve approximate 600 feet of the site or from the site. And also rectangular rapid flashing beacon, an RRFB at the Morse Street, at south of the site driveway for pedestrian safety. Then the deed, is it possible in HOA documents to have deeded parking spaces for each unit, for each owner? Because the last thing we want, I would imagine, is there to be any sort of disagreements with, you're having a party and now suddenly the spot you think of as yours, someone else is parking in. Okay, so that's what I had for E. The rest that I have, I'm not sure where they belong. So could we ask that the bridge is built above the floodplain to ensure continuous accessibility for residents and safety personnel? Also, I think this was in there, but I went back and I couldn't find it because there's a lot of conditions in here, so I apologize if this is there. That the applicant shall comply with all permitting requirements with respect to MESA and DFW, for example, the Blandings turtles. I think that's in there somewhere already, but I couldn't go back in and find it. Okay, only 2 more, I promise, I'm almost done. As Drew Hoyt suggested, fencing off the contaminants that are off-site. Maybe we can talk about that. And the last one goes back to the 9/29 meeting. I tried to write this all down, but It took place, so September 29th meeting, it took place at the 2-hour and 12-minute mark until roughly the 2-hour and 16-minute mark. And Bill Buckley read to us Board of Health regulations, page 10 of their regulations to page 11 of their regulations with testing well water quality. And testing shall be conducted if downgrade of hazardous material storage site or other sources of contamination. The health department may require testing for water quality parameters, including, and there was a whole lot of stuff which I just couldn't write down. Then the additional section on page 11, they can ask due to local conditions for protection for additional parameters. So I wanted to talk about adding in a condition there that we would follow all of the different, I believe it's 3 different gradations of Board of Health regulations. So I wanted to talk about those. And that's it.
All right, I'm going to answer one fairly quickly. The fence that was, I don't want to say proposed, requested to prevent individuals from going onto conservation property. My recollection is that, Matt Brennan, who's the health director, had expressed that he, and he didn't do it in a public hearing, but he had expressed, some concern about that, about not allowing access to that property. So what he had proposed, or what he was thinking of, was would the applicant be able to help us in eliminating some of the solid waste materials that are on that property. And what I requested that he do is to obtain an estimate as to how much it would cost to clean up that site. And the estimate that he received was $9,850. So item I-18 is responsive to that. So in other words, the applicant would pay
Oh, I see,
a
okay.
set amount, okay?
Oh, okay, thank you. I did not understand what that was for. Okay, retract.
Okay. Now, which one do you want to go back to then? Where do you want to start?
Why don't we start with D4, the community contact? So D4 is community contacts, on-site contacts to address neighborhood/community concerns during construction and procedures for regular outreach coordination with the neighborhood.
So who typically, Paige, who typically would serve in that regard?
Well, I think it's talking about someone on the developers team would be assigned, and like Scott or, I don't know, the police would have a number to contact in the event of a situation or just needing to reach someone to address more immediately any concerns that come up. So I think it's part of like a pre-construction planning session that we have, where we always ask for, the contractor's name, the developer's name, who do we contact in an emergency, that type of thing. So I believe that's what this is referring to.
It would be
Judy's
part of
nodding, so.
part of the construction management plan.
So if anyone in the neighborhood were to have concerns, they would contact town hall, they would contact, how would they go about doing that?
Would contact
I don't
me.
know, like I'm thinking of the construction site uptown, I think it did have, the developer's name on it. So I think typically a construction scene is gonna have a contact number, the neighbors would start there. And then if they didn't get satisfaction, they end up at
Town
town
hall.
hall. Yeah, so,
That's right.
you know,
Yeah, I mean, typically it might be posted or something, clearly on the site, so that there's a name and contact number.
That's
I mean,
the way it's
that's
usually done,
typically
yeah.
what I would expect to see.
Okay, so if the neighbors have a question, they would look to see what the phone number is. There would be a sign at the site, and if not, they could contact Town Hall.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that people understand that they have that available to them. Okay, so the next one would be D12. And thank you for that information. Okay, so D12, which is the visual on-site soil and groundwater observation and screening. My comment would be if something were found, they would be testing to indeed show that something was found. Is there a way that we could possibly have a condition so any potential remediation costs and oversight is not to be passed to the HOA? Because this sort of cost could be quite substantial, and it seems that for an HOA that would just be getting going, this might be, a lot of money.
And again, this would be during the construction phase.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
So there would be no individuals residing at that location.
Right.
So theoretically, there would be no homeowners.
Yes.
Or even necessarily a homeowners association. But I think what you're saying, your concern is that it would cost X amount of dollars to remediate. Would the developer then pass that cost on and add it to the homeowners association monthly fees or what have you? Is that what you're concerned with?
Yes, that, and if there were some sort of a delay in a portion of the remediation.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a certain amount of remediation that needed to be done prior to completion and issuing of an occupancy permit. Some of it was done, but not all of it was done. And now part two, let's say, of remediation, the bills would go directly to the HOA. That's what I'm looking to prevent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I question like when, and I don't know the answer to this, it's more of a legal question, but at what point does an HOA kick in? I'm not sure, because this could be phasing. You could have people living in 10 units while the last, units are being built and whatnot, I think. But I feel like in other projects, it remains, the project is owned by the developer until it's complete. And at that point, then it gets turned over to an HOA. But I defer to anyone who knows better than me on that. That's my feeling, but it's by no means a fact.
It's a legal question I'm not confident to answer.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there might be some generic language we could ask to satisfy Kim's concerns, but also make clear the intention of the board. Because again, we have to remember all of this is very regulated by the state. So this is not something that usually has too much local control. That said, I think you could add in things that give you a level of comfort, like within, 48 hours of finding something, the building commissioner shall be notified, make sure that it's not something that can be kept under wraps. And then, make sure somewhere in there about that homeowners association concern that, all costs, but let's be real, costs all get passed on to the future buyers in one way or another. Anyway, I just think we could do this generally.
Well, I think you may want to, frankly, you also have to be a little bit careful that the board doesn't go beyond its jurisdiction.
Yeah, this is a highly state regulated area, contamination. So I just add something, Barney, and maybe if Kim's okay with it, something about I would want to add in maybe they must notify within a certain amount of time. Like, when would you want to know? Right away, right? I would imagine. And then, I don't know, if you can editorialize or make, how you put something, but just say that you want it to be addressed before I mean, maybe I guess it all depends, but do you want to have any contamination issues addressed before anyone moves onto the property? I mean, I don't know how this all works.
Well, again, Paige,
Again,
it's during the construction phase, and if there are if the soil samples indicate that there are concentrations that would require notification to DEP, the applicant is required, required to perform a soil assessment and to inform us in writing of the results, and construction is then going to be pending, suspended pending the results of the assessment until the building commissioner authorizes any further construction.
Yeah, that's good. I just didn't know if there was any phasing planned where, you might not be, you might have, what if they do it in, I don't know. I can't remember we discussed whether this would be done in phases. So, would they have the opportunity to sample everything and disturb all earth before, the first person moves in? I can't answer that question.
And again, this is all required during, the excavation for foundations and slabs. So, again, it's well before anybody is residing at the location, well before an occupancy certificate has been issued for anybody to reside there.
Well, that's my
There's no
question,
homeowners association yet.
Barney, I'm sorry, but how do you know that? How do you know I apologize if this has been covered. They could build, 10 units and then want to get occupancy. We see this a lot. So I think you should make sure you know what the expectation there is that, they might not be able to afford to come and do 36, basements and foundations all at once. They might want to do 10, sell those off, get some money. And, so that's, I guess my point is will all the excavation be done before they are coming and asking for occupancy? And I apologize if this has been covered. I just don't recall that answer.
If I could piggyback on that?
Yeah.
Is there a way that we could have a licensed site professional take control over that while they're doing that construction and site work? We've had it done in the past. Both the Board of Health and myself had required it, and that licensed site professional, which is like a civil engineer, is taking full responsibility.
Well, again, what we have right now is visual on-site soil and groundwater observation and screening by an environmental professional.
So basically, they would be the LSP.
Yeah, so, but I think what Paige is saying is, if construction is going to be phased in, you're going to have a homeowners association existing, say, after the first 4 or 5 houses are done, even though the others have not been constructed yet. So, dovetailing with what Kim's concern is, if there are remediation costs, even though you have only a small number of people who are residing there, that they not be required to bear the cost of the remediation.
I think a lot of this project, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, a lot of this project is going to have a lot of that site work all over that place at once, because they got to pull in infrastructure and all that other stuff before they can even start building one house or one building. So a lot of the infrastructure is going to go in there, so a lot of the site's going to be disturbed already. And that license, that LSP will be fully responsible for that. I agree with Paige. How can you monitor, have an occupancy of one section of it and then they disturb another section? But that LSP would be responsible for that undisturbed or remediation of that undisturbed, affected area before those occupancies are granted. See what I'm saying? I mean, so I think there is follow-through.
I'm sorry?
I think there is follow-through.
So there's a level of protection if it's an LSP.
Yeah, a level of protections through this whole thing. I mean, obviously, an LSP is not going to sign off on it if there's contaminated.
And you'll be stopping construction.
And I'd be stopping construction on that until they get remediation, and they'd have to file with DEP as well. And DEP would be coming down and they would file their own remediation plan.
Would remediation take place prior to construction restarting?
It would probably be in the same process, yes.
Okay. And so if that were to happen, then the cost would be borne by the applicant.
It'll be on the developer, because they're gonna have to burden that cost. Now, on the back end, do they?
Right, no, absolutely. I mean, the nightmare would be there's $500,000 worth of remediation and, you know, it's 10 homeowners because they've done this in phases. Or there's, I mean, even if it is the 38, that's a lot of money for 38 homeowners. So looking at one of the sentences within D12, if the project needs to be modified or changed in any respect due to the results of such assessment, the applicant shall so inform the board in writing, and the board shall have discretion to determine whether any such change or modification is subject to the provisions of 760 CMR. So if something were to be found, if there were an assessment and something were to be found, does that mean that the project needs to be modified or changed in any respect? Or are we just talking about construction, modification or change with respect to construction?
Well, let's assume that they find some contamination, and the resolution of the issue would be to put vapor barriers in the, you know, in the residential units, residential buildings. I think that would require a modification of the project, because that's inconsistent with what has been presented to us and what would have been prepared. So they would have to come before us to determine if things of that nature are substantial or insubstantial modification.
Okay. All right, I don't know. I mean, I'm one of three, so how do you two feel about it?
I mean, again, I really looking at this as a developer cost and expense.
It's totally a developer cost, yeah.
You know, ultimately, fees are going to go up for various reasons. They may build that into, you know, into where they are, but it's a developer expense.
Okay?
All right.
Mr. Chairman? On D12, on like the 6th line down where it says construction shall be suspended pending the results of such assessment until authorized by the building commissioner, do you think it makes sense to have the word after assessment and have it say or and until authorized? I mean, do we want any sort of discretion or anything, or do we want to clarify?
And piggybacking on that, we might want to include the Board of Health.
It's nitpicky, but it just feels like it's missing a word, because it could say and it would have the same meaning, or it could have or, and it would be building in flexibility.
Oh, gosh, sweetie, I am so sorry.
Oh, dear.
Okay.
Gotta love Zoom.
I'm afraid by putting the word or in page,
No, he's gonna drop me off.
That's
at
Greg
the train
Spear.
and-
Greg Spear.
I mean, at the bus.
but
Greg needs to mute.
By including the word "or" page, it would give the developer the opportunity to say, the assessment has been done, I've got the results, I'm going to commence construction. And I wouldn't want construction to commence until Scott, whether on his own or through the advice of the Board of Health or any professional, says it's okay to go ahead.
Right, okay. And then do you want to add in something like the Board of Health shall be notified within 1 week of, receipt of lab results or something like that, so that we know the town's in the loop early on in the process?
Well, again, they're required to inform us, the ZBA, of the results of the assessment. My initial reaction would be, it doesn't mean anything to me, I need an expert. So I think we would contact the health director. We would have to contact the health director.
Okay.
I have no problem with adding wording that, the board and the Board of Health is to be informed, but I think this board, whether I'm here or not here, would immediately say, we need an expert. And the local expert is the health director and the Board of Health. So we would be contacting them.
I do like Scott's suggestion, though, of adding in there, construction shall be suspended pending the results of such assessment until authorized by building commissioner and the Board of Health.
Yeah, I think that's
Is that
fine.
what you were saying? I think that makes
I think
sense.
that's,
Or you can say in conjunction with Board of Health,
yeah.
Okay.
something like that.
And I would say the health agent, the director, not the board, not.
Okay.
Yeah, the
make
health
it
agent.
Health
clear.
director.
Yep.
Health
Yeah.
director?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
that'll,
work hand in hand with Matt.
Okay.
Matt and I work well together, so.
okay, great. And I also
Hold on,
would,
hold on. So we're going to need to amend what's here. We can hold until we do all them together, okay?
sure.
Okay.
But also in the first line of D12, Scott's suggestion, maybe instead of saying screening by an environmental professional, maybe say screening by a licensed site professional, be a little bit more specific.
You realize that this is really not really, it is a verbatim condition from what Environmental Partners suggested.
Oh, sorry, environmental partners.
Or you can just put / licensed site professional. And keep the same language and just add.
I think we'll just put a licensed site professional instead of environmental professional.
Because
Okay.
usually they're the civil engineer and they take full responsibility.
Yes, they have some serious standards that they
Yes.
have to follow.
Well, their license is on
Okay.
the line.
Yes. Okay, so, want me to
Which going next?
go
Yeah.
on next? Okay, so moving on to E, which is roadway and traffic safety conditions. The first one was, I wanted to add no parking on any turns, or no parking on turns at all, however we should
That'd
work.
be at E7, is that where you put that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure, yes. And also, I guess E7, that parking restrictions to one side of the road shall be temporary.
I mean, the parking shall be
Oh,
temporary.
parking, sure, yes, parking. Yes.
All right,
I'm not seeing where that goes.
E7,
Yep.
page 18. At the bottom, so on-street parking of motor vehicles shall be restricted to one side of such roadways. and be temporary.
And that parking be temporary, yeah.
Yes, and parking be temporary. And then temporary to be defined as, and then we agree to a number.
All right, so let me, on-street parking motor vehicles shall restrict to one side of such roadways, comma, shall be temporary,
Yes.
and what are you proposing for temporary?
I mean, what's reasonable? If you have someone coming to visit you, what would be a reasonable definition of temporary? Temporary parking to be no more than 12 hours,
Who enforces this?
24 hours?
Well, it'd have to be in the homeowner's documents.
I mean,
Well,
for a weekend, you know.
it
Scott's
could
not
be,
gonna be enforcing it.
it could be in a homeowners association as well.
Yeah.
There is some language in other developments that has the homeowner association as the
Well,
enforcement.
the remainder of that condition does say that such requirements are to be set forth in the homeowners association documents, so.
That would probably be the place for it, because that could be somehow enforced.
Yeah.
But I agree with Kim on this. You really need to define temporary.
Yeah,
Temporary could be 2 days.
yeah, right, right.
Oh, they're just staying with me for over the weekend. I mean, there's no clear definition on temporary.
So you want to say not more than an aggregate of,
I mean, is 48 hours reasonable if someone's coming for a weekend, or 36 hours? Someone's coming for, you know, they arrive all day, they come Saturday morning and they leave on Sunday
Yeah,
night?
maybe 48 hours unless the homeowners association approves otherwise or something.
Sure, that sounds reasonable. Yes, 48 hours unless pre-authorization
Right,
is
exactly.
obtained from the HOA.
all right, hold on one second. All right, what else did you look at?
And then HOA docks to restrict the number of vehicles allowed to be parked at each unit or for each unit, restricting the number of guests that anyone is allowed. Or not. I mean, certainly open to discussion.
All right, well,
And I don't know
let's take
that,
one thing at a time. On-street parking motor vehicles shall be restricted to one side of such roadways, comma, shall be temporary, and in parentheses, not more than 48 hours unless otherwise authorized by the homeowners association.
yes,
Okay, now what else?
yes. So this next one may not be in E7. This could be E8 possibly. So do we think we should restrict the number of total vehicles allowed to be parked at each unit, or for the number of guests allowed? Should we do that?
I don't think you can restrict number of guests.
Or the number of cars, not the number of guests? Can we restrict the number, or should we?
If we restricted at a number, we could do the same thing, you know, to, unless otherwise authorized in advance by the homeowners association.
Would the homeowners association come up with their own version of this, though?
I would think so.
They would have to come up with, and they're going to come up with a homeowners association documents.
Yeah.
Okay, number one. Number two, we have in here conditions, certain things that are to be required in that, in those
that document.
documents. And what we've done in the past on condominium association projects is have town council review and approve.
So we could put those conditions pending town council review and approval?
I mean, he would, you know, at some point, somebody's going to draft homeowners association documents, but
right.
they would be required to run them by
I see.
town council.
Okay.
And maybe this is something we include, maybe it's something we don't include. And if we do decide to include it, maybe we don't even have a number, but we just ask that the homeowners association come up with a number.
That makes sense.
Well, the question is then, is it a condition or just something we would say to Pat Costello when the time comes? This is something we want you to address.
Good question. I don't know. What do you think?
If we put in that the homeowners association is responsible for the amount and other restrictions, I think that would be our best tack on this one.
You would think that the homeowners association is going to be concerned with that, or the individuals who reside there are going to be concerned with that.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
So maybe we don't need to include it.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. I just wanted to have the discussion
Okay.
about it. So I'm okay with, this is something that goes forward and the HOA does this themselves.
I think that would be the way to do it.
Okay. Okay, cross that one off. Okay, so now the next one was the November 16th, 2022 Environmental Partners Letter talking about chevron markers and an illuminated curb sign. Is this something anyone, or what do you think about including something like that?
What were the specific, do you have that, or do you want me to grab it? In the letter, do you have it?
I might have that letter open.
Talking about the letter from the environmental partners.
Do I have that letter?
On the roadway, reflective signs, and markers and stuff, wouldn't that be covered under that?
I don't have that right.
Appropriate directional
It was
safety
November
signs.
16.
Chevrons have to be specific to what they're talking about, but that stuff.
Here it is.
Page 3 of 5.
So I think what you're saying is that the applicant is to be required, to add a condition, that the applicant is to be required to install MUTCD compliant chevron markers and illuminated curb sign.
Would that not be covered under E4, the first sentence, appropriate directional and safety
Yeah, I think
signage
there
shall
you
be
go.
installed
Yeah.
and
That
maintained?
makes sense.
I'd rather be broad,
Okay, sure.
and let the fire department, police
That
department
makes sense,
have,
yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I was not sure what was included in E4, so I just wanted to make sure that we talked about that. Okay, great. So that is E4. Okay, my next one was, I think we had mentioned this as we went through over the last months. Is it important or necessary to have HOA docs have something about deeded parking spaces for each unit or for each owner? So, or is that, again, is that something that the
I
HOA
think
handles for
That's
themselves?
an
Yeah, I
HOA
think that-
thing,
that's for
for
them.
sure.
Okay, fine. Fine. Okay, the next one was, I forget where is the, they're talking about the bridge.
So we do require.
Above the floodplain, is that the one you meant, the bridge above the
Yeah.
floodplain, yeah?
Okay, oh, E6. E6, and I wanted to talk about ensuring that the bridge is built above the floodplain to ensure continuous accessibility for residents and safety personnel.
When you say above the floodplain, you're talking about the height over the river?
Yes. Because the day we did the site walk, Mr. Buckley, when we said during a flood, for the existing bridge right now, which I know is not the final bridge, but he lifted his foot a foot off of the existing bridge and said, "This is how high the water comes." And that was something that stuck with me. So I am hoping that the licensed structural engineer, while this is being designed, that the bridge would be out of the floodplain and high enough so that you could still access the site.
So we're requiring the applicant to provide certification from a licensed structural engineer that, and the certification goes to Scott, to DPW Director Chris Gallagher, and to the Foxborough Fire Chief, that the bridge is constructed in compliance with National Highway Traffic Safety Standards. I would think that those standards would cover
You would hope.
flood issues.
You would hope.
Yeah.
So,
I think they did just revise those not too long ago, so to include the floodplain.
Okay. So that one's handled.
We would hope.
And that's in G3, all the infrastructure shall be installed in conformance with town Foxborough requirements,
Okay. We are getting there. I only have two left. So the applicant shall comply with all permitting requirements with respect to MESA and DFW, Department of Something and Wildlife. I think that's in there, but again.
It is.
Under
Yeah.
C6.
Oh, C6. Okay, thank you. I simply couldn't find it again. C6. Okay, and so my last one had to do with Board of Health testing for well water quality that we discussed at the 9/29 meeting.
So I did someplace in Judy's initial draft add wording relative to Board of Health, their well water regulations.
You ever hit G8?
Is there a G?
8?
Yeah, compliance with the Board of Health's private well regulation is required if any irrigation wells to be constructed.
Oh, okay, great. But there were 3 levels of testing. And so I wanted to discuss, and this is on page 10 and page 11 of their regulations, which I then could not find, of course. But I know Bill had referenced that at that meeting. So do we think that in G8, it's the first level, second level, or third level? Because I think the first level was required, and the second 2 levels, if I'm remembering correctly, were discretionary.
You don't remember the what?
I mean, I can go, you want me to play it? I can certainly play it. Hang on.
Mitigate that, that could be removal, voice access, it's all kinds of things.
Month was that there would be watering from a well on site for the establishment of the
It's coming.
landscape plan that was discussed last month. And
I can turn it up if you want to listen to it, or?
Go ahead.
what might come up with those wells.
I would imagine they would have to test and get a permit to do that by the Board of Health, and they would evaluate a host of parameters.
Okay.
If you don't mind, why don't you let me jump in here on that? I knew you asked that last time, Kim, so I did some research, and the Foxborough Board of Health has actually just promulgated, like in the last year or so, their own wells, their own regulations. And I would put them up on the screen, but I'm afraid to take that off. But I'm going to read it to you. It's actually on page 10. And it says, for all drinking water and irrigation wells, water quality testing utilizing the applicable USAA approved shall be conducted. So it's not a discretionary. It shall be conducted by a master EPA certified laboratory. So here's what they have to test for: arsenic, chloride, copper, hardness, sodium fluoride, iron, lead, manganese, pH, coliform nitrate, E. coli. And then there's another section that says if you're in a drinking water irrigation wells downgraded from hazardous material storage site, known area of a hazard material release, or other source of contamination, the health department may require testing for water quality parameters. And then this testing may include, but is not limited to, inorganic compounds, synthetic organic compounds, and volatile organic compounds. And then there's another section, which is the next page, 11, which says that they can ask, if necessary due to local conditions or for protection, they can ask for additional parameters. So it must be done by the Board of Health. I've just kind of read it to you. I'm sorry I can't put it up there, but you can download their regs. You have to test for those things. They may require extra testing, and then they can require testing beyond that even. So if the board thought that it was appropriate.
I can continue, but
Okay.
that's
So-
pretty much it.
So again, they're talking about what the Board of Health is concerned with is wells for water and irrigation. They're on town water, so they're not going to be digging a well to service anybody's home.
But they are using a well for irrigation.
So what we have in G8 is that they're required to comply with the Board of Health. Board of Health's private well regulation is required if any irrigation well is to be instructed by the applicant,
Okay,
the homeowners association, or otherwise.
right, but this doesn't specify that. I'm suggesting we go to the highest level that is potentially, that is in the regulations.
Well, they have to comply with the regulations, so I would think that again, if they're going to dig a well
Right,
for watering the lawn
right,
and watering the plants, they would need to comply with the regulations of
Okay.
the Board of Health.
So
I
jurisdiction.
don't think it's
Okay.
necessary to specify which
okay,
one. I think the Board of Health would be the one that would indicate what needs to be addressed in that regard.
Definitely, we don't have the expertise for that.
right. Okay, all right, so that handles my questions.
Okay, so I think
Conditions.
we came down to, and let me just say that all of the conditions that I wanted, outside of what the ordinary is, outside what Judy would put in any 40B decision, have been added. So much of what is in section I, not all of it, but much of it is mine, or things that I asked Judy to make certain that we put in there. But I think, Kim, what you're looking for is, at this point, 2 amendments to the conditions.
Yes.
One of which would be first one would be in D12, and we would replace the words "an environmental professional" with "a licensed site professional."
Yes.
And the second would be in the sentence, well, let me go down to the line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. the 8th line, after the phrase "until authorized by the building commissioner," to add the words "and the town of Foxborough Health Director."
Yes.
Okay. The second section would be E7. And I think we talked about is after the words "of such roadways," put a comma, and then put the phrase "shall be temporary," and in parentheses, not more than 48 hours unless otherwise authorized by the homeowners association.
Yes.
I think the rest of the matters you brought up, we've addressed.
The one other thing within E7 would be, did you already say this? Sorry, no
Yep.
parking on turns at all.
Okay.
Shall be prohibited from turns and the bridge crossing?
Yeah. How about if I say, shall be prohibited from any roadway turns and the bridge crossing?
Sounds good. Yes.
You have any questions? Judy, what's the best way to add those? A single amendment to cover each, separate amendments? What would you suggest?
That's what I would suggest.
A single one?
No, one for each amendment. Aren't you
Okay.
doing more than one?
Yep, okay. You want to make the motion, Kim, for the amendments? Or do you want me to do it?
Can you do it?
Sure. Okay, so let me move to amend condition D12 by deleting the words by deleting the words "an environmental professional" and replacing them with the words "a licensed site professional." And further to add the words in line 8, "and the town of Foxborough Health Director," immediately following the words "until authorized by the building commissioner." Somebody want to second it?
Second.
Okay. So all in favor, well, not all in favor, I'll have to do this by, again, by roll call. So a yes vote would be to amend D12 as motioned. Kim?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
And Barney, yes. And let me move to amend condition E7 by adding the words "any roadway turns" and after the words, I'm sorry, let me strike that. Let me move to amend section E7 by adding a comma after the word "roadways" in the second line, and follow the comma with the words "shall be temporary," and then in parentheses, "not more than 48 hours unless authorized by the homeowners association," end of parentheses, and by adding in that same line after the words "prohibited from," the words "any roadway turns and."
Second.
Okay, Kim?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
And Barney, yes. Anything further?
No.
No.
So let me... So Judy, so I get this right. So I initially made a motion to grant the permit, as specified in the decision, et cetera. Do I withdraw that and now make the motion to grant the permit as amended, or what's the best way to do this?
So I would assume you would vote on the amendments first.
We did.
Did.
So we just
Okay,
voted.
then I would vote, then I guess the vote would be to approve the decision as amended.
Okay.
Do we have
So-
to- do we have to go through the waivers?
So I'll make a motion to that effect. Okay, so I move to grant a comprehensive permit for the premises situated at 119 Moore Street, Foxborough, Massachusetts, subject to the conditions of the board's comprehensive permit decision as amended and the waivers that are set forth in Exhibit A of such decision. So I need Judy, any questions, or? Okay.
No, just as the board had a chance to look at the waiver list.
I certainly have.
Yes.
Okay, I think the motion's fine. It's just that if people need to discuss the waivers, I think you should hold off on voting, but if you're all set, go for it.
Yep.
No, I'm all set with the waivers.
Or second?
Second.
Okay, again, a roll call vote. So
Okay, so this is the vote.
this is the vote. So the motion again is to approve the comprehensive permit
Okay.
as set forth in this as we've amended it.
Okay.
And that includes the waivers.
Okay?
So Kim,
No.
Kurt,
Yes.
and Barney, yes. So as I indicated last month, and as is stated in the decision, there's an appeal period. We will sign a decision. It'll be filed with the town clerk. 20-day appeal period, as you know, commences at that point in time. Thank you.
On behalf of Mike Shagg, myself, and the team, I'd like to thank the board. I know it was contentious at times. And believe me, I know firsthand how much effort and time it takes the board on this. I appreciate each and every one of your efforts. I thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy, don't go away. Do you want Diana to make the revisions?
I think you should, just because of the issues we had with different numbering styles. It's best at this point not to swap this decision back and forth.
And then and Diana, you'll have obviously the signature page, so we can sign it next week.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Judy, thank you very much.
Diane.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Judy.
See you all. Yes, no
Sure,
problem.
you're
See you
up.
again soon.
I know.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for coming in. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for not letting me get beat up.
Okay, so
I got one chocolate bar.
do we have any more,
Any more business?
so, yes, any more business? Are we,
We have to decide when we're going to go imbibe Kurt's scotch, I guess.
I think we need to bring our meeting to a close.
Yeah. Make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Kim,
Yes.
David, this is to adjourn. Lorraine,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
and me, Barney, yes.